Okay, if we could go ahead and take our seats, we'll get started. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of Manitou Springs City Council to order. It's March 8th, 2022. This is a work session of the Manitou Springs City Council. And I'll go ahead and call the roll then. Councilor Wilderholt? Michelle?
Present.
Councilor Chandler?
Present.
Councilor Fortune?
Present.
Sorry. Councilor Wolf?
Here.
Councilor Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Shada?
Here.
And I am also here. The mayor, I'm going to be leaving about 7:30, so I'll give you a warning on that, and then Mr. Shada will be taking over managing the meeting. So,
How dare you?
thank you. I think everybody's had a chance to see the agenda. I would ask for approval of the agenda.
I move approval.
Move approval?
Oh, second.
Okay. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
No, we have to push the button.
Well, in work
Oh.
sessions, I don't think, we don't really need a motion even during work session.
Yeah,
It's-
we don't
it's-
do the button
it's-
during the work
Yeah,
session.
Okay, so we'll get used to this. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's, sometimes we don't have approval of the agenda on the work session agenda. Okay, well, anyway, I think we've got concurrence on that. The first item, discussion, item D1, HD 2101, Historic District Modification, Keithley Log Cabin Subdistrict, 183 Crystal Park Road, William Gooman and Associates, applicant on behalf of Manitou Cabins LLC, owner. Okay, I'll call on staff.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and present this. As you know, per our code, we have to present it during a work session. So we have done such. We've uploaded it for you to review and to look at. There will be no discussion tonight unless if you choose to have that. But otherwise, we've uploaded the information and we presented it in work session per the code.
And if I might just add, because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding or will be over the course of several meetings, we do have to be a little bit cautious. And in order to correct this sort of obstacle on our city code, we've asked the city attorney to clean that up. That'll be happening in the next few weeks. So that said, Denise?
Yeah, it's presented and that's all we need to do per the code. I'm sorry, I was talking
Okay.
about another issue. But
I'm sorry. Okay, my apologies. Okay, if council has any limited questions on the topic, we've had it in our council packets. Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, when it's formally presented, if there's anything on the impact, the potential impact on the historic district across the street from Cheyenne Village, the rest of the log cabin district. And I don't know if it's appropriate to say this now or not, but No, we can say comments as long as it's to the entire council. But I had another comment, not about this, but about I like having it presented at the work session because it just gives me more time to read, absorb, and think about this. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I would prefer to keep these sorts of, same with the planning commission things. I would love to have a little bit more time because when we get at one point we had over 1,000-page document that we had to read within 3 days. And I found that very troublesome and difficult. So I don't care if we discuss it or not, but I just, rather than having the attorney just automatically change that, I kind of like getting it a week ahead of time. Thank you.
Right, it is a lot to digest. Denise, I think you're next.
I just wanted to say you gave direction previously for the attorney to change that. And so we do have our ordinance, I believe it's next week, with those suggested changes for you to discuss accordingly. But we did do that per your direction, per council's direction. So that would be a discussion point for next week.
Okay, thank you. Judith? No question? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and move on then. The next item is the Pikes Peak Cog Railway Parking Plan for summer 2022.
Mayor, I think everybody was expecting for some reason this first agenda item to take a little bit longer because we don't have Neil Mitch here either at this point for the match. And I know Gary was coming, but we are trying to reach him and we don't know where he's at right now. Have we heard back? So I'm wondering if we just want to move back to the parking pricing, move that up. It's your call at this point because we don't have Neil nor Gary here at this
Right.
point.
Okay, well, if council has no objection, we could go ahead and move to the next item, which is actually item 4, progressive parking and pricing incentives. Mr. Cheney is going to present that. It's a fairly, I think, involved presentation. I was expecting this would take about an hour. Is that correct, Roy? Okay, well, let's go ahead then. Denise, do you know when Gary Pearson was planning on being here?
Sorry, I don't know. I just got a confirmation that he was going to be here, and I don't know when Neil was going to be here. Do we know what time Neil was going to be here, Becca? So
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
I
okay,
apologize.
Yeah, I guess my thought is here, I'd like to have Roy and Kevin have a chance to do their full presentation then without
Yep.
interfering. Okay, so we'll go ahead and gentlemen, we're expecting this to be about an hour or so. If we could do that, and we'll move on to the other items later. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. Tonight we're going to talk about the mobility and parking, progressive parking that we're presenting to recommend for us to proceed. And it's basically the parking rates, resident downtown parking, business parking, and center lane deliveries that we're going to be looking at today. First thing I want to talk about is the progressive parking automated rates. One of the things that the professionals and experts agree upon is that parking is always a sensitive issue, and we want to make it by following data and not just from emotional changes, and it does cause a lot of problems when there's adjustments to parking. A lot of times that results in years of keeping parking at a certain price. And so one of the things that's important is through an ordinance that we have a structure where, based on occupancy, that we can adjust the price automatically. And the idea is quarterly, looking at those occupancy rates in downtown area in Manitou Springs. So if you look at item 1, allows for price adjustments 25 cents to 50 cents, up or down, and in bar would be $2.50 because of the price of the bar lot is higher. It would be based on occupancy levels and using turnover. That will help reduce the cruising and increase some open parking space so people will take those spots that are open versus driving in circles looking for spots. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain to us how it helps reduce the cruising, please?
Yes, ma'am. So when we do we'd say we shoot for 90% occupancy. So if we look at let's say we look at 10 parking spots in a row, it could leave like one spot open at all times. And then if that happens, a car that drives by will use that parking spot up, and then someone's pulling out. So when you increase the rates and find the right price, it's not about pricing too high either, because we don't want that. We don't want 50% necessarily parking in Manitou Springs of spaces. We want to find that balance. So you want to keep a certain number open at all times, and that's how you do that with pricing.
Doesn't it reduce cruising more if we have a reservation system at a parking lot? That seems like, because if I don't know if there's an open spot, I'm going to drive around and drive around and drive around, and maybe it's open and maybe it isn't, but oh, it looks kind of far away. Maybe I'll drive around and see if I can find something closer, and that's the problem. I don't see how this is going to solve that problem.
So the experts say that through pricing, you can control the use of the parking space in your city. And by the right price, that dictates on how many people want to come and use the parking area and also leaves space open. So even though the reservation system, I'm not saying it will work or not, we are going to do a pilot. And I did, based on some recommendations, I am looking at Hiawatha to do a pilot. But still downtown, the reservation program that you're talking about, I haven't been able to find any real use of that yet to a degree with software that would be comfortable for us to even try as well, because it's a little more difficult than that when you're doing a whole city, for example. But they are looking at it. There probably is some important parts of a reservation system at some point when they come up with the software to allow that in cities. It is something that they definitely are looking for. But currently, there's nothing out there that will give us that ability to do it in an easy way and trying to keep it moving and flowing. So the way the experts, and Donald Shoup is the expert, is that through pricing, you can get people to come in or less people to use parking and find alternatives. And that is currently the only way to really do it effectively. But as we do a trial study of the in Hiawatha reservations this summer, we'll be able to see how it's working and definitely consider more application of that. So it's not forgotten. It's just probably more complicated than just like reserving a business lot. You know, we have a lot of spaces downtown, so the pricing will actually give us that ability to control the occupancy rate at this time. And then we will continue to test the reservations. So again, following the expert advice, Donald Shoup and every other expert looks at Donald Shoup for the answers in this, because he's the one who has studied it the longest and found ways to do it through pricing, which is one of the few ways that's proven at this point. It's just doing it, and that's sometimes the hard part. So that's why we're heading in that direction. But we have plans where we're currently setting them in motion right now through Honk to do some spaces in Hiawatha and see how it works. So we haven't abandoned that at all. We're still going to be looking at that and then seeing what we can figure out over the summer and come back to council. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Roy, could you kind of run through kind of like a use case, like particularly like downtown, and just tell me how all these parameters and whatnot work? Do they change over the course of a day, over the course of a week? Could you just kind of run that down? And the other thing too I'm curious about is, you said downtown occupancy. So how is that measured? Does the kiosk system give us enough information about how many people are parked?
Yeah, great questions.
Thank you.
Yep. So basically, we're going to go to a two-zone system, and through the PowerPoint, we're going to cover more in detail in this. But if we look at, for example, less than 85%, decrease 25 cents per hour from the rate, what will happen is in Zone 1, which will be all of the core downtown from City Hall to Soda Springs Park, that area, then that's the area we'll be looking at as a whole. And one of the challenges is that Wichita runs at 100% occupancy almost every weekend, even in the winter. And so it mimics the downtown core. And Smitsy is the same way. We actually sometimes hit 107, 110%. People are just hanging out in there, I guess. And sometimes they find illegal parking or double parking in that lot. So the Zone 1 would be all changed quarterly, and we would be doing these quarterly. So Zone 2 is outside of those areas, so outside of Soda Springs minus Smitsy, and then outside City Hall down by Hiawatha and further down east. Those would be the Zone 2. The other thing with the zones, when we go to two zones, is going to be more convenient for the customers too, because right now we go to one zone and then they go shopping in a different zone because there's too many in downtown, then if they don't use the same kiosk, the price may be different. There's too many prices in our current situation in downtown. So this will make it a two-price system, and we'll be covering downtown as a separate price and changes, and then doing a percentage in the outside Zone 2. And that will be shown on a map here shortly. The other question was the T2. We can get data from T2 and our parking logics to help us with the percentages. And again, these will be looked at quarterly. And I'm currently in discussions with Smarky, which is a program we can use that takes the data from these different systems and throws them in one place for us to pull up actual occupancy levels using an algorithm to get those numbers. So then every quarter we would make that small change. We would just put it in the system manually, and then we would see how that goes for the next quarter. If we start hitting the right price, then we're hoping at this point, based on the experts again, is we'll see the occupancy going in the area where we want, and that's the 85 to 92%, which will always leave then, for example, that 8% open spaces in town for people who are driving through can find a spot. Yes, ma'am.
What does it mean we'd be doing this quarterly? Does that mean you'll be reassessing the data and making adjustments?
Yes.
The problem, I think, with that, and I'm sure you've thought of this, so correct me, but quarterly is a long time. And so if we have certain numbers during the height of the COG season, during that particular 6-week period, I don't see the relevance of ignoring it until the end of a quarter and then making adjustments for the fall based on when it was busy in the summer, and it's obviously less busy in the fall than in the summer. So I don't understand why you would do it quarterly.
Well, you could do it more often. It's a good question, and we did think about, you know, the more times you have to do this, the more things change in a short period of time. You know, it starts changing the price constantly. And so there's a deal too that we don't necessarily want to go in and constantly go up 25 cents like every week or every month. So the idea, and talking to interstate parking, for example, in other cities, is that by a quarterly basis, we get at least something going. You know, in the past, there wasn't a increase in parking fees for 8 years. And so at least every quarter, we're starting to make some adjustments. And even though nothing's ever perfect, I do think it will hit that right price area, and then it won't change much anyway. It'll stay kind of constant, and we'll still have that ability to control based on the fact that some people don't want to pay more money, so they're going to park where it's cheaper, which will be outside in zone 2. And others will decide, and again, this is based on studies, others will decide, let me find a different way into town, and let me try to do the shuttle maybe, and so that's what we're trying to do, is change some behavior, and that price will keep being adjusted quarterly until it kind of reaches that moment. We do have off-season rates as well, because things change in the wintertime. So when later in the PowerPoint, we'll talk about the 2 different off-season and then summer rates. So we're also adjusting it by that, because in the wintertime, things start to slow down too, except for weekends.
So if you do it quarterly and you have all this information about all this, you know, full parking lots all summer, and then now you're going to use that data to decide what to charge for September, October, November?
Yes, but keep in mind, we will have a winter rate schedule. So in that point, once we get to the end of the season, we'll go right into a winter rate set schedule and start at those numbers, and then do the same process of every quarter adjustments.
But then the quarterly makes no sense. I mean, if we gather data for 3 months during the busy season, how will that inform what you're going to do in the fall? You already said the fall is just, you're going to ignore it, because in the fall we go to the winter, we go to the fall rates. So I don't mean to be arguing with you, but
No,
it's not
I get
making
it.
sense to me.
Okay, so yes, no, I get it. You know, there's no perfect system, that's for sure. And if we, I mean, you could go hourly and change it, and that's going to be too much.
I'm not suggesting hourly, but I'm suggesting that what you're telling me is that quarterly is going to be ineffective and not useful because we're going to winter rates. So
most.
Why are you doing quarterly? Just because the book says to do it quarterly? Does the book know that we're really busy in the summer and that we're really slow in the winter?
Well, most recommend like maybe twice a year. So we decided to push it to 4 times a year just to give us a little more flexibility. It could be every 2 months. I don't know if there's a perfect plan, but at least we're starting to make those changes, and it will matter if we look at data from one summer to the next. I know we have some crisis here, I get it. We have a lot of cars, and I know we want to fix it quickly, but we also have to try to do it the right way and try to find that right price. So if this summer is kind of that trial period in a sense, we can use that data for next year too and say, you know what, we know where we're at from last summer and we can start there. So at the end of the day, it requires some patience, and I know that's hard because it's struggling here. I get it. I see the cars every summer, and I know we're heading into April soon. Time's flying. But it does give us that opportunity for once to have some controls. If council wants us to do it every 2 months, we could do it. If they want us to do it every month, we can do it. We don't have a problem with that. The recommendations from the experts I talked to said probably they normally do it about twice a year because there still is that, you know, you have to get the data, you got to figure it out. And then you're also, there's still a little motion tied to changing pricing. But you could go more. And if that's where council wants us to, in that direction, to do it on a monthly basis or something, we're not opposed to that.
It seems like going more for the months when we're super busy would make more sense. I don't see the point in comparing February to December. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But, okay.
So I'm not.
I don't understand how your data for the summer at the end of the quarter would inform your next price adjustment decisions, because now it's a different season. So that's why to me, that doesn't make sense, but I'll stop now.
You know, I think there's an awful lot of material here, and I was kind of overwhelmed when I was looking at it in the council packet. So maybe what we could do is give Groy and Kevin and Alex a chance to elaborate a little more on some of their ideas that might, the whole may be more than the sum of its parts in this case, and then we can, you know, maybe that'll answer some of our questions.
Yeah, and we're open to other thoughts and ideas. This is just one idea, and it is based on the experts. I mean, so that's kind of how they do this, and we actually pushed it to the quarterly thing. So that is pushing more than others would want to do, but it doesn't mean, like you said, this is a different place and we have different issues here. So does it make sense to do more often? But I'll continue on, and we probably will answer some of these other questions as we go, and then we can have that discussion again. Yes, sir.
I know. I think I figured something out. Isn't there supposed to be a dark line in the middle of this chart?
It probably would be helpful because bar is on the right side. Is that what you're talking about?
I suddenly kind of figured it out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I saw that too, and I thought, so let me continue with the slide and finish it up.
Thank you.
And that is a good point, though. So in the box there, as you can see, you have downtown occupancy in the first two parts of the box. You have the price change, and then based on occupancy level, how it changes. That second two boxes is actually the bar trail lot, which is currently $10 a day, but it would switch to $20 a day and have a bigger increase because, of course, you can't go up 25 cents. It's not going to have any effect. So again, the same idea will go with occupancy level with automated adjustments. At this point, again, quarterly is what we're suggesting. Again, it will be by zone, and there will only be 2 zones, and you can call bar its own zone because it has its own pricing. So I guess you can say there's a third zone. All right. Let's move on to the next slide, and I'll let Kevin talk about this.
This shows our current on-street and lot rates. As Roy said earlier, we do have quite a few zones and different pricings, which does make it a bit frustrating for our average commuter visitor to town. Currently, we're looking at the 400 block of Manitou Avenue is at 50 cents an hour. We're seeing it's very underutilized, especially this time of year. Then we move into our next zone, which is the 500, 600, 1000 block of Manitou Avenue, 500 El Paso, and Park Avenue, and those are $1 for up to the 4 hours. Our third zone is 700 and 800 Manitou Avenue at $1.50 for up to 4 hours. And the 900, Zero Ruxton, Canyon, and the Canyon lot is our main downtown zone right now at $2 an hour up to the 4 hours. Our current lot rates are Hiawatha and the 400 block of El Paso are running us at $1 an hour up to 13 hours. We've opened up half of Mansion's lot right out here behind City Hall on Saturday and Sunday at $5 a day. Wichita and Shmishni lots are a little different, and that was at the recommendation of the Metro Board, which controls those lots. So we have $1.50 an hour up to 3 hours, which matches the 700 block, which is right about where that Wichita lot sits. $5 for 4 hours, and then the $10 a day. And as Roy had mentioned, the Bar Trail lot, which is currently at $10 a day up to the 10 days, and there's a 50% refund available if they make it to the bar camp and receive the coupon. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what the 500 block of Manitou Ave looks like compared to the 1,000 block, compared to the 900 block. And do you have a map so that we can understand your chart?
The map is actually 2 slides next.
Oh my God. I'd need a microscope for that. Okay, I can't see that. Thank you, though.
We have it up on the large screen, and I can run through it real quick if you'd like. Okay. I will actually stand so I'm not poking people in the eye.
I'll point for you.
Are we gonna
Have to still talk in there, though.
Where do we?
Is it working? Maybe it doesn't work. No, it's working. Push that one.
Okay. Okay. All right. So over here.
You've got to be right next to this so they can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Don't turn around, Natalie. I don't want to get you in the eyes. So over on the far right side of the screen, we are at Manitou Avenue in Mayfair, just west of the Chamber of Commerce. This is the beginning of our 400 block. That runs all the way down towards Memorial Park at the old Chase Bank. This is currently our Zone 1 parking, which also includes part of El Paso on the backside of Hiawatha. Our next zone that we have starts right at the east corner of Memorial Park, and that one goes all the way down to the beginning of the 700 block at Pawnee. And that also includes everything on the backside of Memorial Park, the 7-minute side of Washington, and the little visitor lot right outside of 7-minute on Lover's Lane. So our proposed would be, this would be the start of Zone 1, this blue line, and then all of our green line would then be the downtown core, and all the red around it shows our restricted RPPs that are currently in place. This does include the Mansion's lot, which is right here, as well as Hiawatha, which is not outlined here, but is right here at the large P. And we can go to the next slide, and I've got the other side of downtown. This begins, we have the 200 and 300 block of Canyon on this green line here. The blue line then starts Park Avenue. At the roundabout, we start the 1000 block, and that would go all the way down to the next roundabout at Serpentine. On the other side of the road is all red. That is currently the Manitou Avenue RPP. And then the next slide, it shows us a little more zoomed in on that one. So this shows all of Canyon Avenue up this way to include the Canyon lot. It shows the 800 and 900 blocks of Manitou Avenue, as well as the stretch of Lower Ruxton, which is paid parking. Everything in the red up here is the Ruxton and Osage Duclos RPP. We also have the Wichita lot over here highlighted in the area as well. And then if we could go back to the proposed on-street rate slide, please. Yes. So this is our on-street proposed rates where Roy was discussing the 2 different zones. So our downtown zone would go from Memorial Park to Soda Springs Park down Manitou Avenue, include Canyon Avenue, the Canyon lot, the Wichita lot, and Shmishni lot, as well as the lower paid parking portion of Ruxton Avenue. The summer season would go from May 1st to September 30th, 7 days a week. The off-season would then be October 1st through April 30th, and we would match back to the summer rates on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and all of our holidays, as we've seen our transaction data showing that we're busier on those days, even in the colder months. The rates for that would be $2 an hour for 1 or 2 hours, $5 an hour if you choose to park 3 to 4 hours, and then $10 an hour for anything above 4 hours. And then we go into the off-season rates, which would be October 1 through April 30 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the rates would decrease, and we would extend some of the parking time, where we would begin at $1.50 an hour for 1 to 2 hours, $2 an hour for 3 to 4 hours, $5 an hour for 5 to 6 hours, and then $10 if you choose to stay 6 or more. And that will bring us to our downtown zone 2, which is the 400 block of Manitou Avenue, the 400 block of El Paso Boulevard, Park Avenue, 1000 through 1200 Manitou Avenue, the Hiawatha lot, and the Mansions lot. Those would be year-round rates of $1.50 an hour to begin for 1 to 2 hours, $2 an hour for 3 to 4 hours, $5 an hour, 5 to 6 hours, $10 for 6 or more hours. Yes.
Does that mean that Manitou Ave on the 1100 and 1200 block will be all paid parking?
It's a consideration that we're looking into when the MAPS project is completed.
Well then, where do all the people who live there, what are they supposed to do?
On the, I would call it the north side of Manitou Avenue, there is ample off-street parking for the residents there versus the south side of Manitou Avenue where we have the current RPP.
So the current RPP will, on the south, so the south side won't be metered? It
Correct.
won't be charged?
Correct.
So the only place for the residents to park without paying is on the little south side of the street?
If they're included in that RPP, yes.
Wow, I don't see how they're all gonna fit. Don't they park on both sides of the street now? I've got property down there, and people are always looking for parking spots. So we're gonna eliminate some of them. We're gonna
Right,
have to
but-
provide resident-only parking in the lots if we're gonna take away the on-street parking.
Adding the paid parking from the 11 and 1200 block is a suggestion. We could definitely look at expanding the RPP or starting another RPP. It's merely a suggestion that we were looking at while we were looking at everything. And I saw a hand up on this side.
Yeah, Michelle?
Thank you. For Wichita Canyon and Shmishni, how many annual parking passes have you sold this year up to date?
Year to date, I have sold 10 Shmishni permits. We have sold 22 Wichita and I believe 35 Canyon. I'm not sure if staff sold another Canyon or not today. Those were numbers I looked at last evening.
Okay, so we have 165 parking lots between the three, and you've sold 60
Give or take.
approximately.
Yes.
And where are those people going to park this summer when the visitors come?
The permits would remain valid.
But we would have to circle if all 3 lots are full.
The Wichita lot and Canyon lot are not near capacity yet. The only lot that currently is near capacity is the Prospect lot up off of Prospect and Midland, I believe.
But once spring break starts
Right.
until October 31st, they're circling.
And that's where the progressive parking, we're hoping, will eliminate that and leave some vacant spaces and force some of our longer term parkers to the cheaper areas.
And then my other question is, you are proposing the 30 minutes to 15 in
Correct.
selected locations. What are the selected locations?
We have not nailed those down. We're looking at the 700 block near some of the restaurants, as well as a select few spaces maybe on Canyon Avenue and the 900 block as well, as there's more restaurants in that area. The 800 block between both both sides of the road, we have 23 parking spaces. We don't really see it being very beneficial in the 800 block, but we would look at some select locations near some restaurants and other businesses that have large item pickup.
Okay, thank you.
Which does bring me to the bottom of the slide where the 30-minute free would change to a 15-minute free. And I've got more on that later in the presentation. I'm actually going to turn it back over to Roy. He's going to explain all the parking logics data.
Okay, so again, this is the data we're getting from our parking logics, and this is from January to early February. And as you can see in these lines here, you know, even in the winter months where a lot of times we're in 40% range on the weekends, we have a big bump on Saturdays. Again, some events that occurred in that month. So Hiawatha is getting decent use even in the off season. Next slide, Wichita. As Wichita, ignore the first part, that's overnight. The system would kick on and stick at this number, but then it would reset. We have it set up to reset every morning. And as you can see the data here, again, we are, so a good question earlier about permit holders. Currently, we are at 100% or higher going into the Wichita. Remember, people drive around, they go over to sensors, and they hang out in there looking for a parking spot. We are hoping with the pricing range and what the experts say is that with this pricing, they're going to look for alternatives. It's going to keep some spots open. It's actually should start, the goal is to get this number down to that 82 or 80 or 92 to 95%, which will leave some spots available for parkers, which currently we find at times there's nothing available at all. Okay, next slide. Cannon as well, one of the most popular lots, and as you'll see in the last slide of the charts, also has the least amount of turnover. But again, we're in this high capacity rate. We're not getting turnover, and we need to try to get turnover. Next slide. Once so for example, like let's look at bar here. We had like 100% here. When we start looking at this data in the next few months, if that number drops to like 80%, that means we have 20% open in the lot during these hours. So these lines should start dropping lower. And as they go higher, it means, you know, up to 100% occupancy is happening. So we'll be able to report back on success or not. Hopefully, and the goal is, of course, we see these numbers dropping. So bar also is a lot of peak time on weekends. Not too bad in the winter months over the weekday. That's why the pricing would be reduced during the weekday period, Monday through Thursday in the off season because of this low number. But in the weekends, it's when things get really packed here, and you can see that on each of these slides. Next one. Finally, this lot here, which currently runs a lot like a permit lot because of the MAPS project, has a lot of steady overnight. This is actually real data of steady parked cars. But this is one, too, that gets over 100% at times and sits there for a while. Talking to some of the parking enforcers, they say people are just parked there waiting for someone to leave. So again, with better pricing, we need to get these numbers down, which will also help folks who maybe have permits there to get a spot. So, okay, next slide. So one of the, I think I just killed, oh, there we go. One of the key components here is turnover. And based on our average turnover currently using the data we have, on streets like at 5.81, Hiawatha 2.13, and what this means is the number of cars in that spot per day in that 12-hour period. If you look at Cannon, 1.95 cars. The experts recommend 7 or more turnovers per day. That brings in the revenue need to run a parking program. It also opens up slots for, it's telling you that spaces are opening up versus someone sitting there for hours. So the goals are 7 on street, 5 probably on Hiawatha and Wichita, maybe even 7 at Wichita, Smitzy 5 to 7, and Cannon 7. So if the way they look at this as the benefit is this is our current parking spots available in each lot today, 703. With our current turnover, these are basically how many spots were given to people throughout the day, which gives us about 3,051 parking spaces in town. So if we can get the turnover up to these numbers, the 7 to 5, 5, 5, 7, this brings our turnover rate to these numbers, which gives us 1,300 more parking spaces per day. And that gets people off the street, gives room for folks. So that's really kind of the key of turnover potential is what we're trying to shoot for. Yes, Ms. Johnson?
Do you have any ideas of why Cannon doesn't turn over?
Our best bet, just based again on the whys of turnover, is the pricing's too cheap. So people take advantage of that and just sit there for hours. And that's good in many ways, except when we don't have the inventory to do that. They take over the spot and other people don't get the opportunity. So it's really just too cheap.
I can answer to Canyon. Your residents are parking at Canyon. So if you have 40 spots there, 20 of them are residents that have purchased their annual pass for the year.
I would also like to add, currently we have opened up the Canyon lot and some of Canyon Avenue due to the CSU gas work to some businesses and residents that are being affected with the road closure and the construction that's going on.
Was there any consideration of having a reserved parking spot for residents? Because that seems to be a problem, especially if you're going to eliminate more of the free parking on Manitou Ave toward the west end there. That's going to make things even more competitive. And when you live there and you have no place to park, and then you have to have someone come pick you up, you know, from the pool parking lot to go to the west end, that doesn't make sense. So have you all thought about that all? Because I know Michelle uses paid parking, the parking lot for her vehicle, and you know, you leave and your spot is taken, what the hell are you supposed to do? It's not a pro-resident approach. Was there any consideration of that, or did you decide it was a bad idea, or what's that story?
It's later in the slides. Oh. Yes, we have. We actually have looked at businesses, residents, and trying to cover all the different folks in town, trying our best to try to help all of them. So there is we'll cover the resident incentive program.
And when you do your metrics and you review this quarterly, I assume you're not going to be reviewing the metrics for the people who have their reserved parking spot where that's where they live and that's where their car stays. That wouldn't be part of your analysis, would it?
The RPPs?
No, if I've paid to park in the Schmischney lot because that's the only place I can put my car, I don't see how that vehicle being parked there should impact your statistics when you do your quarterly review, because that's not a visitor. That's someone who lives there, and their car might sit there for 4 days before they use it again. How does that factor into your metrics? Because it sounds like a very large percentage of some of these lots are annual resident spots.
It's a good question, because this was brought up when I was talking with Interstate Parking. We decided to tackle these areas first because there's a lot of things in parking that are maybe not set up the best way. One of them was the permits. But because we already have 4 different projects here for changes, we had to stop somewhere. We haven't addressed the permits yet. And it is a challenge, because some cities are restricting permits to just overnight and then in the day not. Every city has different different ways to do it. And the thing is, if we do increase the price, it's still in effect. So let me address Cannon. If we have 40 spots and 20 are always taken, the occupancy of 20 is what we have left, obviously. And if that's at 100%, the price increase would still help drop that 20 down. It won't affect the other 20 because those are just parked there. They won't get a price increase. They paid their permit. But the 20 that are there will see a price increase because we're going to go up. And so then that number will still drop. So it doesn't change the fact that numbers can still drop even if it's not exact because of permits. We do need to discuss at some point permits and how does that factor in or not. And it's really up to council if you want to factor in permits or not. Are they restrictive to certain hours? We only have so many solutions, right? There's only so many things we can do. But it is a discussion we will have to have at some point because to have reserved spots takes away from the other inventory. Nothing wrong with that if council agrees that's important for the residents that live here to have those spots. But I would argue that regardless of permits, the pricing still gonna control those who come in to just visit and park in downtown. The number's the number. It does reduce Cannon to 20 spots. I totally agree. At the end of the day, all those have to take into account. But the pricing's still going to help control that number. If we're going to shoot, so if we use it, Cannon again, it's the easiest one. It's small. If 20 are taken, it leaves us with 20 parking spots. And we're able to, let's say we price it and it goes down to 10. That's too low, right? We'll have 10 spots always open, so then the price goes up or down to get more people in there up to that 90% or 92%. So we'll still be shooting for the same goal, and that price will help us do that. So that's probably the more important thing right now, but we do need to talk at some point about permits and how it affects our inventory. So great questions. And we did think about it. It's just we decided to work on these first. So to finish this off then, basically, maybe we don't have as many spots as 4,351 because of permits, but even if we took the permits out in the current potential parking spots and the future, we still will see an increase in those spots because of the pricing. And so that's, to me, is important because then we leave space for people to drive and find a spot and get off the road. And it may not solve all the problems, but it is a step in the right direction to get people to stop them from cruising. And I think we have to start with something. So any more questions on this? And we'll continue on with the resident program that was asked about. Yes, Mr. Shader.
Yeah, what I'm curious about is just like as a use case, somebody who's arriving in town, we have all these rather sophisticated metrics and stuff like that. How in the world would they know driving into town that it might be advantageous for them to park, let's say, at Hiawatha because it's a few slides back, it's cheaper, okay? How do they make that decision? It seems like to me an awful lot of this stuff that we're trying to imagine are behaviors that you guys know. I'm not even certain the downtown residents can conceive of this plan, okay, in terms of putting it all together, especially if it's changing quarterly and all this other kind of jitter to the program. So the person who's coming into town, and how would they know coming into town, what kind of information, how would they figure this out? That it would be that they're thinking, I'm only going to stay 2 hours, so maybe I ought to go further into town and pay more, or maybe I'm thinking of spending a half a day here shopping and going to a restaurant, and maybe I need to be in one of these outlying areas. What kind of communication is going to happen?
Okay, so a little bit later, Alex is going to talk about our communication process that we'll be using. But at the end of the day, it is important that we get the message out there. I would say right now, because of our several zones we have, that the message is even more complicated for people coming into town, because you can be a block away and pay a different price. At least now, we will have 2 zones only. And so once they learn a zone, some of it's going to be learned behavior. Just because not everyone will go on the website, not everyone will read no matter what we post. But we will get all the information out there. We will try to keep it simple. We have the Parking Logics program and the map, which a few people said it's been great to go on there and look at the map and see where lots are available. Some people will pay no matter what, and they don't care the price. Other people do care about the price. It really is dynamic and a moving target. But we will get the information out there the best we can with Alex. We did talk about that, and he'll talk about that in a moment on some of the strategies that he'll have. Personally, and from talking with the experts, we looked at 25 cents increase, and does that affect anyone really? And will they come the next week and say, oh my gosh, it's up 25 cents? And most likely no. People that maybe live nearby might notice the change. But most people, if they want convenience, it's pretty acceptable in towns to, if you're in the heart of a downtown, you're going to pay more, and if you're further out, you're going to pay less. So that's some common knowledge for some folks. But we're going to continue to push this out, explain how it works, make them understand simply that if you're parking in the heart of downtown, the price will be higher. If you want to save money, park outside of downtown. And I think we got to keep the message very simple and just keep trying to push that. And then eventually they start to learn that as well over time. I wish I had that 100% answer to that, because if I did, I probably would write a book or something. But it's tough. It's tough. And communication in every area is tough. I mean, just not in parking, no matter what we do. Trying to get it out to folks and make them understand it's difficult. So we will do that, and Alex will talk about that in a minute. I think it's your turn, Kevin, to talk about resident downtown parking, and then we'll go from there. And then Mr. Shade, if you have questions after Alex with that, we can discuss it some more.
Our proposed resident downtown parking program that will replace that 30-minute free option, we would like to be able to give all residents of Manitou Avenue or Manitou Springs 50 credits for parking annually to be used at that resident's discretion. The only real restrictions on that that whatever parking rules or policies are in place in that area would have to be followed. Once those 50 initial credits have been used, the regular parking rates will apply. We are looking into discount programs for seniors and veterans. On December 31st annually at 11:59, all of those hours will expire. The program will be license plate enforced, so we'll have to collect that information, upload it into our system for our LPR to capture. To be eligible for the program, our department would need the following, which is similar to the RPPs. We would need a valid driver's license, a valid vehicle registration, and proof of residency that you are a Manitou Springs resident.
Kevin, what are you envisioning as a credit being? Is that like an hour or $1?
It would be by the hour, because we don't offer a 30-minute option anymore, so it would be by the hour, so that would be 50 hours essentially in a year.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, can I? So that's per resident with a vehicle.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not per household. So if there are, say, 4 people who are residents of Manitou living in the same household, that's 4 50-hour permits.
Is that
what I'm?
How we decided, or were we leaning more towards household?
So talking to the MAPS board, they thought it should be 50 credits per household, 50 hours per household.
Okay, so my next question is, I'm a resident of Manitou, and I have been given 50 credits. And so I'm going to actually drive my car into town, which is something I try not to ever do. But I feel lucky. And so I've got and I'm cruising around and I can't find a parking space because there isn't one. And this did happen to my family. We decided to go to a restaurant in downtown and half of my family ended up having to bail. And we had to end up leaving Manitou and going to a different restaurant in another town because they were cruising for over an hour to find a parking spot to meet us, right? And that's a problem for us only a part of the year, and I'm bringing this up now because I'm going to bring it up again. When that 36 shuttle is running, they can all park in my driveway, and we can take the shuttle into town. So part of this parking, to me, while I understand this sounds like a really great pilot. I'm really okay with gathering some data. I realize we haven't done anything for so long, and now we're like trying to fix this big, huge problem. So I'm okay with that. I'm just thinking that if we don't tie this to a process that can actually really work between our resident permits, our RPPs, our household 50 credits, and so on, I'll love to see the data. Let me just put it that way. We have to tie parking to remote lots with shuttles that are resident-centric as well as tourist-centric. Because when that 36 shuttle is running into town, I spend my money in Manitou. And when it stops running, I stop spending my money in Manitou. Because I'm a tourist, really. I live here and I pay taxes here, but I'm essentially a tourist looking for a parking spot like anybody else. So, anyway, thanks.
No, that's great information. The difference, the hope, of course, when we find the right price, is that you could come in and find that spot. That's going to be the difference now, right? Now we have to give it time to tweak to the right price. I don't know what that is. Nobody does until we give it a chance and see where we end up. But if we get it down to that 92% and you come in with your family to go eat, you'll find your spot. And that's kind of the goal of the program as a whole. And then we want to make sure we honor the residents by giving them these hours, And I don't know if 50 is enough, or I know the map board thought it was pretty nice. 50 hours, they were thrilled to death. But it doesn't mean it's the right number either. Maybe residents need more, maybe less, I don't know. So that's something that can be debated as well and figured out what works best for the residents. But again, just the idea is that if we get the right price and we open up the occupancy that we're shooting for, then you will find a spot and then be able to enjoy the downtown, and we really want to make that connection. So that's the goal of this, so great question. Yeah.
We can move on to the next slide, please. This brings us to our proposed downtown business parking program. We are looking to permit downtown employees, businesses, a permit to park in the 400 block of Manitou Avenue or the Prospect lot. The annual permit cost would be $100 per year. Our department would limit the permits based on staffing requirements per the day for the business. The permits would be the only permits that would override any parking time restrictions, as there would be those 2-hour, 4-hour down on the 400 block. The businesses or the employees must provide to our office to be eligible for the permit, valid driver's license, vehicle registration, proof of employment, or an active business license. And my department would also make sure there was no outstanding parking violations that were owed to the city on the requesting vehicle. Councilor Johnson.
I have a question about the staffing requirements per day. Like, how would that mean like the art center could have 15 permits and we would hand them out to the 15 people working that day? Or it would be, what is that? Or is it just, how does that work? Does that make sense?
It does, and thought about a couple different ways. We were looking at initially starting the program with your busiest day, your highest staff level, that would be the maximum permits, and we could tweak from there if need be.
So my question is though, like, there's different people working, right? So I mean, at the art center, we usually just have 3 people working. It's not a big deal. And we pretty much work all the time. But, you know, on the day so I would have a permit, but Alan might not have a permit because we only got 3 and there's 4 of us working. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Like, because it's per vehicle, right? You're registering your vehicle.
Right.
Not, like, would it make more sense for the art center to just have 4 tags?
It's not a tag thing. You need your driver's, you need all
Well,
that.
I have a tag, it's in my car right now.
I mean, but they want,
Right, Counselor Wolf's correct. We're going to steer this more towards a license plate permit where the LPR
Yeah.
would catch it.
Okay, so like with Sunwater Spa, they have 15 people working.
Right.
5 of them, like but there's 45 employees, so 35 of those 30 people wouldn't have a permit at all. So there could be a day where no one could park in the 400 block if it's not the right people that have the tag.
Yeah, so if they have 40 people and they only have 20 tags, you necessarily can't pass the tag on the next day, and then that person's out of luck, kind of. Is that what you're saying? Yes. Yeah. So that's a good question. I'm not opposed to giving the number they need, and then kind of an honor system, I mean, because it's hard. How do we can't drive around all the time looking for violators of the businesses either, or anybody. So I think it comes down to rules and say, look, this is what we expect. You're saying you have 5 per day. We can give you passes. We expect you to honor that. If for some reason we find that that's not happening, and I'm assuming, Kevin, we can, with the LPR, know who's all in there so they can do random checks. And then if we find the one who said they only have 6 per day, suddenly have 10 every day, we pay them a visit and chat about it. So, and then we get that changed. So that's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
so do I understand then that if I'm a business, I can get a permit, I pay my $100, and I might go to park at Prospect, I go to Prospect, and it's full, right? Like, so it's still, there's no reserved parking spot.
That's correct. There still is some, luck of the draw that you find a spot, because I don't know if you can ever guarantee anything. At the end of the day, first come, first serve sometimes. But the Prospect lot is a little bit underutilized, and so is the 400 block of Manitou Avenue. They're underutilized. So the hope is, again, as we try this, is seeing if it works. And we may find that it's not working quite right, and we're going to have to figure out something else. And I understand the reservations. I do.
How long does it take me to walk from the 400 block of Manitou Ave to Swirl?
You personally? I think you'd be a fast walker.
I don't mean me personally.
Yeah.
How long would it take you, Roy?
Me too.
I mean,
long.
any human, okay?
Yes, I get it, yeah.
Because if I'm living downtown and I have no place to park, I'm just trying to figure out, am I going to park someplace where I have to walk a half an hour to get home every night and then walk
Yes.
a half an hour to get back to my car in the morning to go to work?
Roy,
That doesn't sound
Yeah, well,
terribly practical.
It's a good question. So we have been in talks with the chamber, and they're talking about maybe a shuttle, and we're talking with others too, other businesses that may work on a shuttle that picks up folks from the school, because there'll be people who actually park at the school from some businesses, and then would swing around. The other option later in the meeting tonight, we'll be talking about the EV trolley, and that will be eventually maybe a way too that we can do that, because it would also cruise in that area and pick up people off the 400 block. So we are trying to find ways to help with getting people to the core of downtown. Yeah.
And I understand we're not using any of the school parking lots during the summer when school is mostly out, other than a special day. We're just going to leave those lots empty?
That's incorrect. Their business and the city, we've had talks with them from a city standpoint. Businesses have talked to them, and they said they could give us some spots up there. So we're looking at that for probably mostly the businesses, because they tend to use the school lots versus trying to get visitors to find the school. It's more difficult. So if we get the employees to park there, for example, and then there's a shuttle, they'll learn it quickly and be able to find their parking spot, and that would leave downtown areas open, whether for visitors or residents to find.
But those parking spots aren't part of this analysis, is that correct?
The school?
Yeah, the schools. There's more than one. I mean, when you say the school, I don't know which school you're talking about,
Yes,
but I know
there's-
of 3 of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does not. Those would be, that's icing on the cake. Yep. That's extra.
Thank you.
We can go to the next slide. So this is our downtown business parking program continued. We've had brought to our attention some businesses that have frequent customers. So we are wanting to offer pass cards that would offer increments of time at a discounted price over the current rate that we would have. The cards would be sold in 10-hour increments up to 50 hours. If those are used, or if a customer purchases 20 hours, decides that they need another 10 hours, they are reloadable. All the time would expire, again, December 31st at 11:59 p.m. annually, and anything that was left over is non-transferable or refundable. To purchase the pass card, it would be through our office, a valid driver's license, current vehicle registration, contact information in case we need to try to get the vehicle moved. That's already information that we do collect from residents that receive a permit as well. And the staff would again check to make sure there's no outstanding parking citations owed to the city on that vehicle.
How does the city benefit from that proposal?
That helps the businesses downtown, specifically the chiropractor has quite a few frequent customers that they're here all the time. They're supporting a local business, so we would like to try to support that parker.
Okay, so those 10-hour increments would be 10 hours regardless of what time of year or which, if it was an expensive spot or a less expensive spot, it's just 10 hours anywhere you want to go, any time of year, is that right?
Correct.
It also will be limited to an hour per visit, because it is for those repeat customers that come in, especially for some of those businesses that have people that come in 2 or 3 times a week. So to give them a way to do that without paying that full rate every time would be just, again, we're trying to look at all the businesses, the residents, how can we make this work? And to give them that ability to come in for that hour to get, whether it's an adjustment, whether it's buy some herbs or coffee or whatever they're doing down here, they maybe do that 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. And so this gives them that benefit. The other side of this is that many times people don't use all the hours either. I mean, there's no refunds, and they use it or they lose it. So at the end of the day, it's up to them to frequent the business and use it the way it's intended. And since they can't do it for multiple hours beyond the hour, then there's some controls there that it's not abused. So.
Next slide, please. This brings us to our center lane delivery changes that we are looking at. In an effort to keep the center lane of Manitou Avenue clear for emergency vehicles and also pedestrian safety, we're recommending that we stripe the center lanes 20 feet on either side of the crosswalk as a fire lane. This will prevent delivery vehicles or tourists from getting right on top of these crosswalks, impeding the sight lines for the pedestrians trying to cross the street. And also, if they choose to violate this, it will be a much heftier fine, and hopefully we can wake some people up that we are blocking a sidewalk and causing pedestrian safety issues. The spaces between the fire lanes on the crosswalks will then be designated as loading zones with breakaway signs, similar to the yield to pedestrian signs that we have now in the event the fire department does need to go through the road, indicating that it is a loading zone with the ordinance rules and all the fines to be posted on there. and staff has already taken several steps to try to alleviate some of this center lane congestion, and that is police, fire, and parking are the only vehicles that may utilize that center lane to complete any job duties, as we're usually in and out very quickly. And we've established a 15-minute zone in our license plate recognition system that as staff is driving down the road, they're catching these license plates and it's starting a timer on the LPR. So when they're coming back, it's notifying them if that vehicle is in violation of the 15 minutes. And this slide shows just an example of what the fire lanes near the crosswalks would look like and what the breakaway signs that we would place along the center lane would look like.
Can you please explain to us exactly what that license plate recognition system is?
That is the camera system that's run off of a server in our parking office that all of our paid parking valid license plates are uploaded to, our resident permits are uploaded to it, our parking lot permits are uploaded to it, and this allows staff as they're driving down the road, the camera's catching the license plate, the laptop in the vehicle is making one sound that the vehicle's okay and another sound that the vehicle is in violation.
Because every time I go to put in my free 30 minutes, because I'm just running, taking out my dog, leaving, but I don't want to pay a $70 ticket, it's going LPR. And to me, I'm like, oh, great, what did I do this time? So I feel like I'm in violation.
No, all that's doing is it's uploading into our server that's in our office that's sending this information out to our vehicle to validate if a vehicle is legal to park. And the LPR, Counselor Wolf, is the license plate recognition system. And I'm currently in the process of, the vehicle will never have to stop moving. It can continue to circle and service any kiosks that need it. And these detected hits will be sent out directly to the staff on foot. So the vehicle will constantly be checking the RPPs and notifying my staff on foot throughout town, we have a violation here, we have a violation here, and that's part of where everything became more efficient moving to the T2 platform. Next slide, please. Alex, you're up.
So as we spoke about very briefly, this will just be high level on really just communication in general, but how we reach people, right? So there's many ways to reach people. You have signs as in physical signs, social media, postcards, in person, visiting with them. You have the news media, Chamber of Commerce, parking kiosks themselves. You also have our website, other people's websites, a vast variety of things. But the way you decide on what methods you're going to use is who you're trying to reach. So it wouldn't be fair to assume that every person who visits Manitou Springs visits our Facebook page. It's probably quite the opposite. You know, our Facebook page is great for reaching residents or people, you know, at least in the El Paso County region. But, you know, if you want to reach visitors, a great way is news media, but definitely doesn't reach them all. Physical signs, the parking kiosks themselves, the messages that they read, or the receipts that they print. Those all can work in our favor. But when it boils down to it, you can't reach everybody. You can't force someone to read the sign as they drive past it, or even remember it 2 blocks ahead. So the best you do is try to reach everyone. And then just as similar, you know, if you want to reach businesses, you can go and talk to them. I've done that quite a few times. You can send them postcards, ask the chamber to email them, things such as that. And then, you know, it's not listed on here, but with reaching residents, such as with the residential 50-hour credit program, that's basically the communication you see me do every day is reaching residents. So, you know, our website, social media, postcards, word of mouth, things like that. So I know that was very high level, but if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Alex.
And one more slide. Our implementation timeline for everything, should council approve. Late February, we've already created and tested the license plate database for the free credits. Early March, we're going to begin the same thing, creating a database for smart card or pass cards, however you'd like to describe it, for the frequent customers. Late March, we will begin creating our new parking zones in the back-end software. There's 2 softwares that will need to be updated, so it'll take a little bit of time. In early April, once we have our back-end software rates installed, those will be sent off to T2 for update of the mobile pay, the text-to-pay that we've launched. Late April, that's when we will update the T2 enforcement app and the LPR system. May 1st, everything would launch and go into effect. May 1st through August 31st is when the occupancy would be monitored for any pricing adjustments. And then on September 1st, any rates, if needed, would take effect.
Thank you. Council, we've come to about an hour of discussion. I think this has been interesting. If we could maybe just quickly go around the table and see if there's any follow-on questions or what our sentiments are. Julie?
My sentiment is that this is pro-business and it's anti-resident. I think we need to guarantee to the residents who are unable to park on the street anymore because of paid parking, those who are not part of an RPP, that they have a place where they can pay to park in a lot, and that's their spot. Spot number 2 is for me, and no one else can park there, and I've paid for it. Because I just don't think it's right for our residents to have no place to park when we've removed their on-street parking, and then have to cruise around and pollute the city while they're looking for a parking spot that may be far away from their home while they've got a car full of groceries. So that would be my comment, is I'd like to see reserved parking in lots for residents who don't have a garage or an on-street RPP arrangement, or even just adequate on-street parking. I mean, it's probably fine up in Crystal Hills, but for down here, we're not doing anything. This proposal doesn't do anything, as I can see, to help the residents other than to give them 50 hours a year to park.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? I think Judith, I think you were first.
Roy, you may have answered this question, but this was a lot, and I'm just to think about. One of the things that was confusing to me going through this was you kept referring to Zone 1 and Zone 2, and I'm like, where's Bar Lot? And I think you did say that really is its own zone, and I was going to actually recommend that it be its own zone, so we actually have 3 zones that we're monitoring. I want to really feel hopeful, and I want to echo what Councilor Wolf is saying, that, you know, really want to make this fair to residents as well as tourists and business owners. I just don't see in the long term. I'm really going to be curious. I want to see this data. I can't wait to see it. I just don't see that our parking problem and our cruising problem is going to really be fundamentally changed until we tie it to a citywide mass transit system with remote lots where we're bringing people in. I see it as a bigger picture, and I know we're going to talk about the electric vehicle trolley, which I'm going to bring that up too, because it seems very tourist-centric, the routes. But I look forward. I'm going to keep an open mind, and if council wants to move forward, I'm looking forward to seeing data and seeing how it works.
Thank you. Michelle?
A couple things. Being a downtown resident, especially when you talked about permits, and I know that's not tonight, but down the road, my heart rate went up. Because, like I said, in the summertime, I'm not parking anywhere close to where I am. Now, granted, you know, I'm healthy and I'm capable of walking and all the things, and I've reached out to friends and I park in their driveway and whatnot. But let me tell you, it's not fun, you know, and I'm paying to park. I'm paying. And then my other question is, I'm sorry, the $1.50 for up to 2 hours and then $2.50 for hours 3 and 4, is that going to reflect on the app for those that renew? So when they go to renew, it will say $2.50 or whatever, however many more hours they want?
Yes, all of that will communicate through the app with that single platform of T2, and that's on the implementation timeline is where all of that information would be sent to them to upload. And I did not mention, in June, July at the latest, T2 will be releasing the back-end software for that portion to their client, which would be us, so we would be able to do that without any delay.
And then is it one of those things, let's just say hypothetically, they don't want to pay $2.50 an hour for hours 3 and 4, they can just not renew? Or is it automatically being renewed?
They would have to renew and authorize that transaction, but that's where our enforcement would come in, and should they choose not to follow the parking policies or rules in that area, our enforcement would find them.
Other comments? Nancy?
Thanks. First of all, I really appreciate the analysis you guys have done, and I certainly recognize that this is only one component of a much larger system, and it's a system that's almost impossible to solve. When you fix one thing, something else goes out of whack. But I see over the past, 10 years, probably tremendous improvements in parking within Manitou, and attention, really well-intended attention to all these issues. And as someone said, you can't solve everybody's problem. You can just do your best to mitigate the issues. So I see this as an operational issue, and I appreciate learning about it. And I love to learn more about it, continue to learn more about it. I do question about, will more staff be required to keep track of all these licenses and registrations and so on?
That will not. The office staff that I have now, that does include myself, would be able to process these just as quickly as we process a residential permit or a lot permit now.
Okay.
Which, even if you're a brand new resident or customer, you're in my office maybe 6 minutes and your transaction's complete.
Okay, and then knowing when people leave Manitou that you've got all their registration, will it be an annual update just like it is for the RPPs?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I understand license plates and everything change year by year.
Yeah,
as well.
so, as I've seen the RPPs expand dramatically over the past few years, I mean, that was a tremendous nod to the need for residents. So I think that's great. And I'm all for keeping an eye on the concerns of the residents, but I think that this, in fact, does balance the needs of residents, visitors, and businesses, and that's a very difficult balance to strike. So, but definitely keep an eye on residents, because I can understand the frustrations. And it was my understanding that we've dramatically increased residents parking and did not reduce resident parking with. I know MAPS was not a reduction. While the construction is going on, it's a reduction. But once the construction is done, I believe that the number of parking spaces were virtually the same, was it not?
That's not true for the west end.
I'm talking about the MAPS area.
Yeah, is the MAPS area the west end of
Yeah.
Manitou
Yes.
Ave? Yeah.
Yes.
I just got a text from someone who said they lost 2 parking spots. Well,
Anyway, I'd be interested here, because as we approved all of that, it was my understanding that lost, now illegal parking was lost, but legal parking was not lost, so.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that there was illegal spots that they had to take away. They're not legal parking spots. Otherwise, it's the same parking.
Okay. I guess I'd like to add, I appreciate the amount of work you've done on this. This is a very vexing problem, and it's, the solutions are different for different users. If I'm a visitor and if I can park close enough to a restaurant to walk, I'm fine. If I'm someone who's coming home with 2 sacks of grocery and a toddler in one arm, and I have to walk through snow to get to my home. I really don't want to park very far away. So I think we've got a couple. We're trying to balance things. I can appreciate that you're trying to do that, and there's going to be some trial and error. And I don't think everybody will ever be happy, but I appreciate what you're doing here. I did notice on the slide that we talked about the west end, the 1,000 through 1,200 blocks of West Manitou Avenue. It seemed to me that prior to the maps work starting, there was quite a bit of discussion, concern by residents there about the amount of parking they might lose. So I guess my thought was we should try and make sure they have places to park as residents, give them priority, certainly. So that'd be my thought. With that, if there's no objection, I'd suggest we take a 15-minute break.
Could I add one more comment? Number one, we appreciate you letting us know, the things you're looking at. We're just coming from what we see in our perspective, so it helps a lot. And I agree in that area, probably good to review that and maybe decide on a different path in that west end because of how tight it is. Also, we just have to think about, if we're going to try to give more parking for residents, how do we do that? That's the hard part. Do we have more lots? Where do we go with it? So it's the struggle. And from the standpoint of transit, we are doing the study on the transit. Stantec will come in April, I believe, and talk about, after we talk to MAPS board and come up with maybe the transit options. And I totally agree, transit's going to be a big component along with all micro-mobility. So appreciate all the comments tonight. Helps us a lot. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. The next agenda item is the Pikes Peak Cog Railway Plan for summer 2020, presented by Mr. Gary Pearson.
Yeah,
Gary?
thank you. I'd be happy to come back if we need more time. I apologize for being a few minutes late. The vagaries of I-25 are always vexing. The plan for the summer is much the same as the plan laid out a year ago when we visited, or 2 years ago on the phone. A lot of texting and email. Well, let's start with the website. The website is very explicit. We worked with your staff on identifying the optimum amount of language to explain to COG visitors, who are also Manitou visitors, where to park, where the congestion is, what to do, what not to do. Then on days of arrival, we send both emails and texts, principally text in real time to anybody coming to explain hot spots and give them advice on where to park and when. We always fill up our lot first, and we keep real-time data on that so we don't have people driving up Ruxton just looking around. If it appears that our lot will be full, then we ask the patrons, who are patrons of both the COG and the city, to park in our off-site lot in Colorado Springs, which has 128 spaces, I believe, and we shuttle them in. So what we're trying to do is anybody that is COG specific, meaning that they're coming only for the COG, we're asking them to either park in our lot or outside the city. Anybody that's a dual customer, both of COG and the city of Manitou Springs, we're asking them to park in our lot when they're using the COG, and when they're not, to consider off-site or have to park in town. So that worked pretty well last year, but as we all know, we weren't running a full schedule last year. We only had to use the off-site parking a handful of days. Don't know the exact number, but those days when we did have a full complement in the parking lot, we shuttled folks over, and they were pretty receptive to it. It's going to be a busier summer this year for all of us for all the COVID reasons that we know, so we're just going to have to do what we did last year, and that's just work in real time with your staff to see what's working, what's not, and adjust on the fly. So that's the short version. It's probably the long version too.
Council, any questions?
So, Mr. Pearson, so last season on your website, you were listing Hiawatha and other lots. On your website, will you be focusing on those two lots, your lot and the remote lot in Colorado Springs? I mean, how will that communication get to the?
It'll be much the same as it was last year, and what we're during the summer season, which is the critical season, as we all know, we're in very constant contact with your staff on what to do and what not to do to optimize parking and traffic in the city. Our first two priorities are our lot first, off-site lot second for people that aren't otherwise visiting the city. If they're visiting the city, then we're just identifying through a kind of a joint effort where availability is, so that people aren't just driving around and spending time where there is not availability as opposed to where there is availability.
How do you know if they are planning on just going up on the COG, or if they're also going to be spending time in Manitou? How would you know that?
We ask them.
So it's on the.
Yeah, we ask that if they are only visiting the COG, that they park either in our lot or off-site and not in the city. Now, if somebody doesn't tell us the truth, we can't investigate that, obviously, but everybody's seemed to be fairly cooperative so far.
think I missed it. Where's the off-site not in the city parking lot? I think I missed that piece of information.
The Shriners facility in Old Colorado Springs.
And will you be renting that only sometimes, or will that be throughout the summer months?
We have it under a long-term lease throughout the summer and into the fall.
Was that used throughout the summer, this past summer?
Only when it was available, but we only used it when our parking lot was actually full.
So when your lot was full, that's where you directed people to park?
If they were COG-only visitors, yes. If they want to come into the city, as we've discussed before, and have lunch and an ice cream cone, then they're going to not want to park in Colorado Springs and be shuttled over.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
May I add one thing?
Sure.
It's been, we really worked hard on creating relationships with your staff, Roy and Dole specifically, and Denise over the last few years. And this real-time communication is very, very helpful because when we encounter problems, we get on the phone and we talk about it and we get them fixed. So compliments to your staff.
The match presentation next, please.
John, Mayor, Pro Tem. John, I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation since I'm heavily involved in just about all of it. So I'll return when
All
it's
right.
over.
So for the record, Councilwoman Johnson is leaving the meeting. All right, Neil, you're on.
This is on, okay.
And Michael.
Good. Well, I have to I'll begin with a...
Name and address, please.
Really? Oh. Neil Minch, 151 Clarksey Road, Manitou Springs. So we have to begin with a thank you to Becca, Nicole, and Alex. We would not be here without them. So we could go to the agenda, please. So these are the topics we're going to be kind of covering here. A couple of these will be pretty quick, but it's always good to just let people know who our board is, because of course it changes every year. We do have two. We could advance, please. We do have two members, Randy Hodges and Michael Howell, whose term expires in July. And we will be looking for 0, 1, or 2 new board members at that time. I serve as the chair, Sarah Gallagher as the vice chair, and Kinsey Watts, who joined us last year, as the secretary. So this was our third round of applications. This was the first time that we offered the $750 mini grant, which was a simpler application. We also offered training sessions. We did 3 of them. Becca Sigbert delivered it. 2 were in person and 1 was online, I think. And we would say that was a great use of a few hundred dollars. We will see that we are recommending 84% of the grants applications be awarded versus 55% last year. We saw improvements, particularly in the budget preparation. The other thing that helped a lot this time was we used a Google Drive, applications posted straight to the Google Drive, and that was a very efficient process. We also had more than double the amount of funds this time around because it was a full year versus 6 months. And per the budget, we expect to see less this time next year. We can advance, please. So the application window closed 12/31. We had the rubrics out and the binders out by January 5th. On the 13th, we had Tier 1 presentations, and we also added anyone who was asking for $10,000 or more, we had them come and present as well to give us an opportunity for questions. January 27th was when we did the rubric rating calibration. We did the grant recommendations and rationale on February 10th. On February 24th, we finalized the feedback. We're going to be giving feedback to every applicant this time. Again, it's part of our help people write better applications. And here we are on March 8th. So if we could advance, please. So the summary here for what we call the Tier 1s, those are the 5 entities. We had a budget of $323,000. We will be recommending award of all of that. And for the Tier 2 competitive grants, we have a split between what we call the mini grants, which are $750 maximum, and then the competitive. At the end of all this, we'll have about $9,500 left over, and those will be used, if approved, to do some custom website development to build on our Google Drive experience. We will not be doing a mid-cycle round this year. So let's kind of get to the next page. Thank you very much. So for the Tier 1s, you'll see we have a dark blue and a light blue. We are sticking with the 55%, 45% split that was part of the original recommendation. The 55% is for the 2 city projects. Our rationale here is we felt we needed to get Hiawatha Gardens funded so the design work and the engineering work can be completed, so we know what is needed. And then all the balance of the 55% would go to the Carnegie, Carnegie building. The other thing that we would like to recommend, and this was in the Carnegie building application, to help them secure long-term funding, is that they will be receiving a minimum of $45,000 a year for the term of the existing match program. Yes.
Have you found, I don't think that's legal, so it doesn't seem right to me that you'd be able to tie the hands of future match board members, or that it seems also inconsistent with my understanding of the ordinance. Has this been run by Jeff Parker at all, do you know? Or Becca's shaking her head?
I'll let Becca answer.
You can say things like, we would like this, we recommend this, but no, you cannot tie the hands of future city council.
And this was, to help secure if we go down that path, bonding or whatever, it's to help fund that. Okay?
I don't think it's legal, so it doesn't matter what the reason is. But like Becca said, if really what you meant to say is we're hoping that future match boards will agree with this proposal, and we're hoping that future city councils will agree, and it's just a hope and a wish, then if that's going to help you, then that's fine. I just wanted to be clear that you can't make a promise to do that in the future.
Okay. So for the balance of the 45%, that would be the same as last year, a three-way equal allocation to the three non-profits. Any questions? Okay. So mini grants have probably got too much detail here. We did have 15 applications, but we're only recommending award for 8. In some cases, they were really one application broken up in 3 pieces, but that's just it. So we ended up agreeing to fund 8 for a total of $5,205. And again, each of the people who are being recommended versus those who aren't will be receiving some form of feedback specific to their application. Tier 2. So we had 32 applications requesting $242,000. We had 166 available. We're recommending 27 projects are funded at $145,000. If we go to the next page here, this is a full list here. There's a couple down at the bottom that we're only funding half of what, half of what was being requested, and there were some very specific reasons for why that is. But the others are all receiving 100% of what they were requesting. Any questions? Yes.
What does Rocky Art Museum supposedly plan to do with the money? And we already gave them, what, 10 grand last time? Mm-hmm. And now they're getting another 5 grand? Mm-hmm. What are they going to do with that?
This was, Michael, for interior work, I think. Is that right?
Yes, the current grant is strictly interior work.
And what, if anything, have we done to determine the viability of this building as a potential museum?
So we, one of the kind of rules that we put in place for anything that's like infrastructure is that organization comes and presents to us and gives us a bit more detail about their operations, their viability, the number of visitors they're getting, their income. And frankly, we took that from last time we were here, and some of the questions that were asked.
So what is their viability and their income in there? Are we allowed to know that?
Well, you are, but I don't have that on me.
Thank you.
Anything else? So the next steps would be awaiting approval next Tuesday, notifying recipients, and they would have to provide a W-9. I've already talked about the feedback. Our March 24th meeting will be focused on what we want to change on the process from this iteration, and we'll have to make some changes to SOPs. That was all I had really to talk about. One thing I ought to have said, I think it was you, Councillor Chandler, who asked about the rubric last time we were here. I actually think that's been one of the most stable pieces of everything. Even with a couple of new board members coming on board, they got it, and they had the same projects bubble up and bubble down as the rest of us. So if there's anything I felt really good about, it's a rubric. So I thought I'd give you that.
Thank you. That's really good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
Any other questions? Yes.
Why do you need $10,000 to improve your website? I'm not a website expert, but that sounds pretty expensive.
Yeah, we actually talked about that during the budget process. How it works now is the applications are pretty much coming in through the city website. The application goes to a Google Drive, but all the other attachments have to be uploaded manually. We make copies of stuff, all of the messaging to applicants to remind them to send a completion report, to have them submit a completion report, to encourage them to apply again, is all manual emails. So we actually have a member on our board who does this kind of work for a living. She has done something like this for another company, and it was an idea to look at implementing a customized website for handling the applications and the interactions with the applicants.
Was you hiring your board member?
No.
Are you setting it up for an RFP?
Yes. We have to. It's the rule. So, and again, we did talk about that in October, and the Google Drive experience showed clearly to me the benefit. So just to give you an idea, on the Monday, Tuesday after New Year's, I spent 8 hours in here. We had a temp in here, copying these things, downloading them and uploading them, because there just isn't enough staff time to do all that. So we're really looking to be efficient and not build in a load of complexity. Okay?
Neil, I'd also add that it'll help you really collect, as the program grows and evolves, you'll have all that data collected for you, and because right now the process is so manually cumbersome and time-consuming. So it'll just really create tons of efficiencies that currently don't exist.
Yeah, it's me who will be sending emails out to everyone, as an example. And guess what? I don't want to do that.
Let me just jump in. Julie, I had the same question when I looked at that budget for the website. I thought, what is this, NASA? But Nancy's absolutely correct on this. I mean, the first 3 rounds were strictly manual. And basically, this is what I had to read each time. And I know City Council has to read this pretty much every week, so I empathize with you guys. But yes, down the road, I mean, we're looking at 10, 15 years for this system to really function effectively and efficiently and quickly. Right now, if I want to review an application, I have some questions about it, I have to go through and flip through and read everything on it. So, yeah, I think the 10,000 will be well spent, and it's going to last a long time.
Michael, what's your opinion about spending money on the Rocky Museum? That really bothers me.
Could I suggest, I'm sorry, but I listened to this whole discussion, and I just think that it's the board's recommendation and the individuals on the board. It's probably at this point not appropriate to get individual. It should be a board presentation. That would be my suggestion. No offense, Michael.
Yeah, I understand.
What was the board's discussion about let me rephrase the question. What was discussed? What were the pros, what were the cons, and why did you end up where you did?
This was project number... Thank you. So perhaps it'd be easier if I tell you the feedback that we're going to give them, because that will reflect some of what was inside your question. Which project number is this?
It's the last one.
No, that's St. Andrews.
Let me get my glasses. One, it looks like.
Okay, thank you. So this is the feedback that will go to them. Your budget includes faux stained glass restoration. This was already funded in the first grant award last year, and thus has been removed from consideration for this award. You are encouraged to consult with other museums, particularly art museums, to understand other sources of funding and help for the Rocky Art Museum. We'd also like to see visitor numbers, perhaps by month, with comparisons to last year. So that, I think, suggests there was discussion there. At the end of the day, the merits were we had discussed how we could support infrastructure type of projects, and so the Rocky Art Museum came and presented to us in last year, wasn't it, Michael, I think, in September, just to give us an idea of what their plans are in terms of the phases of work that they have to do there. The vote on this one was unanimous at the end, but it was after we had adjusted the amount of funds that we were going to award them. So that was it. And there was discussion.
So to summarize, you don't have information about how many people use this museum, right? You're asking for that, so I assume that means you didn't have it?
We didn't have the number of visitors, but we had the sales information that was given to us last year. Online sales and in-store sales.
So it's a store, it's not a museum?
It's both.
Oh.
Every museum sells stuff.
Questions for Neil? Thank you. Any other questions for us?
I have questions for the State Council.
Yeah.
In the event of a grant being awarded to an applicant via match, if the applicant does not complete all of the project or projects that were listed in the grant application, who is responsible for moving forward to recoup those funds? Does Match start to do something with that? Do we initiate something like that?
Well, I guess what kind of is there some kind of contract or something that you guys proclamate when you give a grant?
Yes, we follow the grant application and we base our awards on what they're going to do with the money. My question is, what if they don't do everything that they've been awarded?
Does the contract address that issue? Usually a contract will say, this is what we're giving you, this is what you're going to do with it, this is the information you're going to provide us, feedback on your progress, da-da-da-da-da. I assume from your question that the contract is silent on this point. Is that correct? Or does your contract say you're going to owe blah, blah, blah? You have to, what does your contract say about it? Or
No,
the
contract
nothing?
does not specifically state you have to reimburse MATS or the city of Manitou if this is not a completed project. It does not specifically state anything dealing with reimbursement. We do ask that each applicant, when they've completed their project, that they submit a project report to us, and those reports are reviewed. And to my knowledge, there's only been one that was problematic so far. And my question is, what do you want us to do?
I guess my suggestion would be is that maybe you guys write a memo to the city administrator about the problem, and the administrator can kind of review that with the city attorney in terms of whether we have the right kind of contractual kind of thing in place and what our recourse is. And maybe you guys need to talk about what kind of a recourse you want when something like this doesn't happen.
Okay.
So it seems like to me that something administrative, a memo to the city administrator, CCing the council about what the problem is. And I have a feeling that we generally get compliance with our contractors and with our things. And maybe it's just getting the right kind of language in the grant or something like that. But I think the city attorney would be able to advise us on that.
Okay.
That'd be my thought. Any other council members have any suggestion on what to do with that?
I concur with what you've just said.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other issues?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Howell. Are you folks finished?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for coming down.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. The next item on our agenda is then going to be the EV vehicle trolley update, and I believe that's going to be Mr. Cheney. We have some slides, I think, right?
Yes, sir. There should be a presentation.
Okay, all right.
And our city engineer, Dole, is going to be joining us. So tonight, we're going to talk about the Manitou Express EV trolley. Here's a picture of possibly how it could look like. Basically, we just want to update you where we're at this point with the trolley and see if you want us to proceed. Next slide. What we're working on right now is with Motive on design and costs. The details of the financing and the grants and delivery expectations, and government purchasing agreement with Estes Park, which we'll cover here shortly.
Mr. Cheney, just real quick, for the record, Councilwoman Johnson has resumed her spot. Thank you. Okay. Yes.
It's working now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so funding, it is $500,000 actually. They told us today, I think it was $475,000, so $475,000 for the trolley, give or take, depending on what else we may want to add to the trolley itself. We are looking at other funding opportunities as well. And now I'm going to pass it on to Dole to talk about the trolley routes and get more details on just some of the thoughts we had.
Hello, everyone. Also, Roy went through that first thing very quick, but we did kind of develop the name of the Manitou Express. So it does kind of roll off the tongue, and then we've had fun with trying to come up with an abbreviation of the MAX or the MEX or the, all kinds of things. So we do kind of and I think it could be kind of become part of our language within city of hey, let me call the MAX and have it come pick me up or something like that. So, okay, in discussing the routes, what you do not see here is you do not see a route that goes up Ruxton. This is primarily, this first primary route really does circulate through the central part of the city. We show it circulating around Memorial Park, which follows a similar route that Route 36 and Route 3 do, or Route 36 and Route 33. And then the thing that was a little bit unique about this one, and also this is just a proposed route, this was just some of Roy and I's brainstorming, is that we actually had the trolley turn right on Cannon, go up Cannon, go down Park, and then tie back into Manitou Avenue. You know, there's no real transit service up in that area, up near the Postal Service, post office, the backside of Soda Springs Park, resident or businesses on Cannon, things like that. So we could actually have the trolley go up there and then go to Manitou Avenue, and then we show it circulating through the Serpentine roundabout. We did show the green section up to Higginbotham because we do think there could be potential to have the trolley go up and circulate through Higginbotham and then provide service or connectivity to Rainbow Falls. So that was just kind of like, this could happen. So then as the trolley continues around Serpentine, it goes back through the main part of Manitou Avenue, and then it goes and connects back in with some of the major shuttle stops there at Hiawatha.
Can you explain the benefit? Oh, no? Okay. Oh, I'll wait till you're done, sorry.
Okay, next slide, thank you very much. That's the good slide, don't change again. Okay, so this one we called it the various routes, and this has a whimsical nature to it. We wanted to really show that, you know, if Manitou owns and manages and operates the trolley, then it is for us to benefit from and to serve the community, and that the city would then get to decide how that operates. And so this was just kind of a fun little, I asked Emily, our GIS tech, I was like, I want you to show a route on every primary route within Manitou. And, you know, I'm kind of having a fun spirit with this. You know, there are some logistical challenges, you know, like we may need to have the primary route operate for, 2 times an hour, and then potentially like the various route operates, only in the mornings, or only in the evenings. There's some operational and capacity things to still look at. But the point of this slide is really to show that, and I'll back up, one of the challenges of Mountain Metro that we've talked about several times here at council is that they're federally funded, and there's a very well-defined process to alter their route. And it has caused some people some frustration, and they, to provide certain input, and then, Mountain Metro has to then process it and figure it out and then release it for public comment. And this, the benefit of this is if Manitou owns and operates this, then we get to have the say. We get to decide how it operates, who it serves, and when it serves them. Okay, so Mr. Shady, you're going to enjoy this part, I think, if you haven't already read this. So what does it mean to have an EV shuttle? We have looked at, this is based on data from the provider. Also, the supplier of the shuttle. Also, the nice thing is that Manitou Avenue through is mostly flat. And so for EV, that's more efficient than going up and down steep terrain. The Serpentine route would offer some slope challenges, and then Ruxton, of course, offers some slope challenges. But if we're focusing on the primary route, you can see, and it's hard for me to see that. Okay, so what does it mean? How much can it operate? How can it serve the community? The primary route without the Serpentine leg is about a 2-mile loop. So based on a fully charged EV charger, which is our EV trolley, which is what we're proposing, it can about do 105 miles on a full charge. Now, of course, there's all kinds of variables. heaters, and actually heating is more battery usage than cooling, than AC. And speaking of cooling, Roy mentioned that some of the variables that might occur with the trolley, and also, I don't know, we've been communicating with Estes Park quite a bit. They have one of these, and they're actually they have ordered their second one. And so the benefits of that is that we spent a lot of time with them. It's very similar to when we kind of learned a lot from Hanging Lake, how we spent a lot of time with them and we're able to learn and benefit from their experiences. We actually are going to have their build sheet so we can see exactly what they ordered from the trolley company. And they talked about, like some of the ideas in the summertime that we could actually get removable windows. And so it's a free flowing, fresh air type trolley. And, you wouldn't want to run AC, but in the wintertime it'll get cold. And so we'd put the windows back in and then they can kind of help keep the users comfortable. Okay, so based on, and again, I just want to point out, this is just kind of our example of how it could be used. All of this stuff is subject to change, it's subject to input, but this is just kind of based on our feeling of when the city gets full and how it could best benefit the community. So based on 105 miles, and again, you'll notice that my math doesn't add up because there's a lot of variables to it, and so this is just to kind of give you an idea. But 105-mile range, 2 miles, and then I just I averaged it down, looking at about 45 loops a day, which is a significant amount of trips. If we started at 10 a.m., based on some of our Hiawatha parking data, that seems to be when that parking lot will tend to fill up the most on a busy summer weekend, and then that trolley could run approximately every 20 minutes. And now I'm just going to go through the data. 20 minutes, why can't we do 15 or why can't we do 10? There's a lot of inefficiencies in stopping and picking people up and dropping them off. And honestly, 20 minutes might be a little aggressive too, even though it's a 2-mile loop, it might be a little aggressive. We might be able to do it at 10 a.m., but at 1:30, that might be a different story. Proposing that we run, not yet, yeah, thanks. That we leave the primary route and we operate it from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and just continue to run that loop, providing service all the way up to Serpentine, people that want to park at the Schmischney lot, people that want to go to Soda Springs Park, all of that could be on that loop of that primary route. Again, I provided this additional data, and then if we wanted to also incorporate the various routes, and I welcome any kind of creative names for that, our thought was maybe that route could help operate before and after the primary route. It could help people who, if there was discussion about having downtown employees park somewhere else, we could pick them up and take them to downtown. If there was community members that were like, oh, hey, I can benefit from this, and we wanted to have a route that runs it down to the Safeway. I mean, I don't know. The point is that discussion needs to happen, and those become options for the community. We did think that this could be used for special events. We don't exactly know how that could be used necessarily, but maybe the special event provider would want to rent it from the city. Maybe they'd have an agreement to use it, and we could help shuttle people back and forth. And then if we are providing connectivity and moving people, then it does bring up the opportunity to have off-area parking, perhaps the school district, and again, where we could go and pick people up and provide them with an efficient, reliable way to get where they need to go. And then also, part of for us to remember is that we could be in a situation where a phone call to the right number, to the right situation, could have that trolley go to where we needed it to go. If we were in a situation and it wasn't on a primary route and we said, hey, there is a big production at Hiawatha and there's a big dance and we want to help move people from here to here, those are the kind of things that we could schedule and plan, and the shuttle, the trolley could help meet those needs. we plan to get it ADA accessible. And just to give a quick example, because there's some infrastructure to-dos still for this, mostly in the charging end of things. And for some that have been a little tuned in to EV charging, most discussions are around level 2, which are not slow but not fast, and then level 3, which is the direct current, high fast, high expense. Because of how we would use the trolley, to use it all day and then to mostly park it at night, we're a great candidate for a level 2 charger, which is nice because the charging infrastructure is a lot cheaper. We don't have to have a 3-phase transformer installed, and our plan would be to install the charging infrastructure up at Public Works so that we could keep the trolley behind the locked gate, keep it secure, keep it safe. We would probably need to have some processes where it gets wiped down before we store it that night. And then that also complements, the city's potential future usage of additional EV charging infrastructure at Public Works for additional future EV vehicles and light duty and a Polaris. So it all kind of complements, just the whole coordination. And then, Mr. Shader, for you, I specifically pointed out that there's 1,770 foot-pounds of torque on the trolley, which was pretty impressive.
All right, now, council questions. Julie?
Why would you have the trolley go up Serpentine Drive all the way up to the highway? Is that in case people want to visit the storage unit? Why are we doing, I mean, I realize this is just a proposal, but I thought, oh my God, what's next? You're going to tell me there's a big parking lot up there or something? Or why is that on the map?
Well, real quick, the reason why we showed that is because the primary purpose was to show connectivity to Rainbow Falls, but there would be no way to turn around the shuttle. So if we wanted to have connectivity from any point in Manitou to Rainbow Falls, we have to drop them off and then continue the loop through Higginbotham and then come back down and pick up people and come back down into Manitou.
Okay. Natalie, questions?
I love the removable windows. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Great. Judith?
Couple cost questions. So the $500,000, is that kind of a base price? That's, like when you go out and buy a car and you just, get the basics, because you mentioned ADA accessibility. Would that be part of the basic price, or would that be an additional cost?
The basic price is like $420,000-ish, and then as outfitted is our $475,000 to $500,000.
Okay, with the ADA.
With the ADA,
okay.
Yes.
And then we would need at least one level 2 charging station at Public Works, and I think we had a cost estimate on that with the EV charging station proposal, but I wasn't sure I don't remember what that cost was.
So it's moving, and we are estimating it's a $15,000 to $25,000 cost. Okay. And of course, it depends on where we put it and how much conduit we have to run and the phasing and the circuitry, but it's a $15,000 to $25,000 investment.
Okay, thank you.
Roy or Dole, do you want to talk about if we partner with Estes Park and join them, and we have checked this out with our legal opinion, but do you want to mention that just so they're aware of how we're getting this price?
Yeah, that was coming a little bit later in the slides, but I can talk about it now. So in our code, it allows us to partner with another city or government to utilize their same provider. And they've used Motive and Hometown Trolley with their first trolley. So they've gone through a couple years of trial and error. And so they're buying their second one from the same company. So that allows us to, start to move on this quickly if council desires, and not have to wait for multiple bids. We can tie into that, and the city attorney has told us that is okay.
So if we did it that way, what would be the timeline?
Currently, if we're asked to move forward, then we would either this week or next week get with Motive and Hometown Trolley to see where they're at this point. They told us that currently they have chassis available. So they're talking probably 6 to 7 months to get it, and it could be a little longer because they have to build the trolley. But it does save us time, of course, if we can just tell them we're tying in with Estes Park and move on this.
So logically speaking, it wouldn't be operational until next year, right?
There's a good chance it would be next year or late this year that we could start doing a trial.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Dole.
I'm sorry, and we do like the idea you said about the trial, is that we could have time this fall maybe to try to figure it out. And also, so what happens is Ford makes the chassis, they send it to Motive electrifies it, and then Motive sends it to Hometown Trolley. So it's kind of a multi-part process to get to it.
Any other questions on council? Nancy?
Yeah, this, for me, begs more questions than, it answers. My knee-jerk reaction to an electric trolley or a trolley in general is, yeah, let's do it. And then I look at the price tag and the operational costs and the potential maintenance costs, and I don't see a revenue stream other than the enterprise fund, which is, I'm assuming, what it would be coming out of. And I'm not seeing how it would integrate with Mountain Metro, So there's just so many, would we hire, I guess we'd hire our own drivers. So the city would have a whole other function. Would there be any revenue producing opportunity, or should there be, depending on who's using it? There's just a million, it's just, right now it's really fuzzy for me. So that, I just wanted to say that. But, I'm sure there's a ton of potential based on your discussions with Estes Park. I'm just not sure yet how it truly can fit or should fit into Manitou. But I suspect there's a way to do it.
Yes, we have looked at, how we're going to have drivers for this. And then probably the best bet would be to contract that out. So we would look at that. We have talked to Mountain Metro. They probably, we're still talking to them, but I don't know if they would want to drive our trolley. And that's okay, but they understand we were looking into maybe adding additional transit in town. So that's the standpoint from the staffing it. It'd be safer to have a contract for that initially, of course, and then we can always go from there.
Please.
To me, a very basic question that is not answered, you've talked about it, but you've not answered it, is who would it serve, the residents or the businesses or the tourists or all three? Because that really drives a lot of the other questions and answers. And again, 500K is a lot of money.
Yes.
For something that we're not work through really yet.
One of the thoughts here, and Dole, you can chime in too, but is that currently we don't have enough transit time to pick up everybody in town. When we look at last summer, as you probably all recall, there were lines of people waiting for transit. So transit's not necessarily convenient yet, and that's a problem when you're trying to improve mobility. This would add another level to that. And whether, in my thought is if we go to more neighborhoods, then sure, we could try to hit those neighborhood areas better. And one of the routes that was set up is to go into the neighborhoods and pick up folks. That a lot will be determined by the council if they want us to be more specific in neighborhoods, or do we handle the traffic going into downtown and then the other shuttles have more room in the area? And then, of course, talking with Mountain Metro, could they expand, or do we want them to expand? When it comes to the pricing at this point, thinking it would be more important that we try to provide the service initially, just to get mobility going, just to get people maybe parking somewhere else and not driving around and hitting the trolley. So the idea would be at this point probably not charging, but having as a service to the community and to even visitors to get people moving and not just driving around. So that's kind of the thought. Dole, do you want to add on to that? Anything that I forgot?
And I provided the information because you could kind of, because I thought everyone would ask about what we think the operation cost is. There's several assumptions made. Obviously, we don't exactly know what a contract shuttle company would charge us. I was just visiting with Gary, asking him how they do their shuttling to Seven Falls. I want to say Rainbow Falls. Seven Falls. And, they hire Greyhound to drive Broadmoor's buses. So this does happen. There is the opportunity to have contracts. There are companies that can provide this service, and then, we can hire them and, we would know the costs. The numbers I provided were just to kind of show some perspective of how much we wanted it to operate. I went anywhere from, if we did 10 hours a day, the ridership hours, and that's what RSH stands for. And also just Mountain Metro, as you guys all know, charges $65 per ridership hour for each of their shuttles. So but that includes, drivers, insurance, purchase of the vehicle, depreciation, maintenance. So since we would own the vehicle, the shuttle, I made some assumptions, which don't hold me to it, but our ridership hour would go down because we would not necessarily have the same depreciation or loan payment or whatever thing. So I used $45 per ridership hour as an idea. I think it's pretty conservative to give an idea about how much it would cost to operate this on an annual basis based on these assumptions. So if it was weekend only, if it was, just the peak season or weekends in the off season, or if it was every day of the year, these are some of the numbers that we provided.
I assume it's feasible to charge if that's what we decide to do you just install some machine that will, take your credit card or whatever. Is that correct? And do we have any estimate on the maintenance and insurance from your discussions with Estes Park?
The good news is maintenance on these is very low. It's not a normal engine. It's just batteries. And they actually check out the vehicle from their site. We'll have warranty, and they'll be able to check out any problems. So maintenance is very, very low. Initially, Estes Park had some problems early on, but we can avoid those we get to learn from their struggles with the product. And so maintenance-wise, it's going to be very low. I don't have those exact numbers. And the thing is, we don't have to move on this right away. We can still move later down the road. If there's some more specific information you need, we can come back with that information. Sounds like there is. And we can try to get more details. And I think still probably tie into Estes Park, so we can still try to push that when we're ready. So this is by no means do we need to answer for next week or anything. It's just if we wanted to, we could because of that tie-in with Estes Park. But we could get more information from actual maintenance numbers to, and they use a company in town, I believe they said in their email, and get a deal with them. So they are contracting out. And so that we can move that way. I mean, again, there's no rush, especially because it would be towards the end of the summer. If we're lucky to get it. If we waited a little bit, we might get it before next spring, and that might be better timing anyway. So that's okay.
And then how long do the batteries last? Like with a vehicle, don't you have to replace the battery like once every 5 years or something? How long would this battery likely last, and how much will it cost us to replace it? Do you know? Is that a big expense?
It's a good question. I don't recall.
Would you do the next slide, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a good question. Those are details like Estes Park doesn't realize yet, and it would not be insignificant because there's a lot of batteries on a thing like that, and then the proper way to handle those and recycle those. It's interesting, Estes Park told stories that their drivers would see the battery go to 20%, and we all know how we react when the fuel light comes on, and they would panic and stop the trolley, even though the trolley had 10 miles left. And then you can't just tow it, because if you tow it, the motors turn into generators, and it will. So they figured out how to disengage the drivetrain so they could tow it. So we are fortunate, and I referenced Hanging Lake, that we kind of get to come in on the heels of some of these pioneers, I'd say, and learn from them. And so we will be able to avoid some of the mistakes or issues that they've had, but we certainly won't be able to avoid all of them. Hold on, not yet.
So can I make a suggestion? It seems to me like it would be possible to ask the manufacturer, or at least the people that on the assembly line that deal with the battery, to let us know how many hours the battery is expected to last, even though it may or may not be that accurate, and then to find out what it's going to cost us when we get to that point where we have to replace everything, so that we can factor that into the annual average maintenance cost along with the insurance and the employees and all that stuff. Has there been any research yet on funding sources for this, other than our budget, or I should say the enterprise fund budget?
If it's okay, let's table that question real quick and hit a couple of these things. So, and Roy mentioned it, and I have over there the over-the-air reporting. So it's a cellular connected device, and so Motive is constantly monitoring it and managing it and giving us readouts and reports of what's going on. So we would always have an idea of where it is, its battery life, any kind of alerts. I am not an EV expert, but we all know that they are pretty sophisticated and also fairly simple. They have 70 moving parts compared to the big term is an ICE engine, internal combustion engine, that has 1,100 moving parts or something like that. There will be the charge for electricity. Overnight, Estes Park was extremely complimentary of Motive and their ability to provide customer service. They are providing these basic, Motive provides the electrified chassis to all kinds of finishers that put boxes and do for mail trucks or UPS trucks or bakery deliveries. And so there's a significant amount of miles already driven on these chassis, and they have a very high reliability rate. So some of that reliability data is already out there. We didn't provide it in this, but it's on their website. And then one of the other points at the bottom of this is Estes Park was really surprised because people were coming into town just to experience the trolley. It had a nostalgic, neat experience to it, and it also was functional, which you can't always get.
That was one of the things that worried me, actually, people driving into town just to take the trolley, trying to search for a place to park. But it would be very popular and be a wonderful thing. You've answered a lot of my questions. I now know what RSH is, and I was also going to bring up the who is this for? I mean, I think we need to explore, you know me, I've said it many times, we don't have a mass transit system that serves our community, and it's one of my things that it's top on my priority list to see that happen. So you mentioned the battery life. I'm just wondering, since we would own it, and we already have at least one trolley, rotting up at Public Works, do you have any idea what the life cycle of the vehicle is, based on 45 trips a day, or based on maybe Estes Park's experience? And then my last question was, it sounds to me like we don't have a window of time where we have to get this special rate with Estes Park because they're ordering one that this is not time limited. So that was my last question.
Yeah, based on code, it doesn't look like there's a time limit. It's just they've already done all the bidding and everything, and we're just tying into that with them, that they are using a trusted company for their needs, and so that kind of bypasses that process. Price-wise, that's what the price is going for today. That could change, of course, as time goes by. There is no limit. You can tie into any city or government that uses something you want to use and similar, and that same company. Because again, they've used them. They can tell you the good and the bad, and we get a lot of information versus a bid where we're just interviewing folks and talking to them. When it comes to the community use, or visitors, that's really up to City Council on how you want to see it go forward. At the end of the day, I think having an additional transit source is going to be positive. If the residents want it more going down into the streets and picking them up, I think that's great. If they are okay with the shuttle system and they'll take those, and that's great. And the trolley can help folks in town and out so that the shuttle system is not overcrowded. That's great. I think there's a lot of positives to have that extra space and an EV on top of it. And if we get an EV from Mountain Metro, that'll be just another EV that we get to use. I know they're trying to work on that as well. I think I answered all the questions. Did I miss one?
Any idea on the life cycle of the vehicle itself?
That's a very good question. I think we'll have to ask, unless, Dole, you remember that conversation.
It depends. Because it depends on how much we use it. If we do, and of course we're not going to do 45 trips a day, right? It wouldn't work in our community. We don't have, so it depends on how much we use it. But these are rated at several 100,000 miles, to operate. They're set up for the FedExes, the UPSs to deliver all day, every day. So I think that except for tires, we would get a significant lifespan, but we'll get it in writing and get an answers for you. And the battery, I also, real quick, the big question, and Nancy asked this too, is who does this serve? And I think that question and answering that will help decide the steps going forward. And I think that it gets to serve whatever Manitou wants it to serve, because we're not subject to anything outside of the city limits, and council will get to decide. We could provide some recommendations, but it could serve however the community really wanted it to serve.
Can I say one more thing about just to answer the final question on that old trolley? My understanding is it was taken out of service, and they were going to stop using it, so they put it up there. One thing Dole and I already talked about, if we decided to take this out of service, we could resell it. And it's a hot item. We already asked them about that too. So if we decided in this community that the EV trolley just doesn't work here, then we would make that and look right into how do we sell this and get some of the money back to do what we want to do. So thank you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is I want to just try and figure out how to give staff direction in terms of where to go with this, okay? And it sounds like to me we have, a window of time to possibly jump in with Estes Park's procurement cycle? What is that estimated to be?
I don't think it matters based on talking to the attorney. We are just allowed by code that if we tie in with another city that uses a certain product or company that they like, we can tie in and order it when we want to.
Okay.
Now, the price and the actual shipment could change, because right now they said they have available chassis, but that could change in 5 months and they suddenly are 14 months out. So we don't know that. So currently they said 5 to 7 months because they have chassis available. So that's the biggest thing. And when it comes down to purchasing, the only thing is we're doing is, as a city and code allows us, is say that we see another city government using someone so we can use it too. And the city council and community is okay with that.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to do here is, and Denise, jump in here if you need to, is what is it obviously, you either want a green light or a yellow light or a red light from us in terms of how to proceed or to delay or whatever. So you want that kind of information. What other information or decisions do you want us to make?
Can I mention
Sure.
two quick things? One is they had to go to their city council to get approval. So their next city council may not say that they want to do this, right? So them and so Estes Park right now.
Denise, that's not correct.
Oh, I thought they did.
No, they're
Oh,
totally okay.
Okay. The second thing is you have $500,000 in the budget this year. So this has been budgeted, but what we do need from you is we have it right now preliminary on the agenda to bring the contract if you want us to do that next week. Or what do you want questions? Do you want to send us the questions and we bring this back for another work session and then we can address it there? But we do need direction of how you want us to move forward.
All right, hold on just a second. I'll take Dole next.
So it was asked about funding options, and this is there are significant EV grant transit opportunities. And so the rub is, there's even some on the state level, and then there's some from the federal level. And the rub is, the deadlines are September 30th, and you don't know for 4 months until you get it. And then if you don't get it, what do you do? And so it's a time discussion of how important is it? Is there direction to pause and recognize that this is not going to maybe be an option anytime soon, and we're going to go and wait for the grants. But the point is there are transit grant options out there.
Okay, all right. Julie? I thought I saw your hand flying
Yes,
around.
I was just going to suggest that we do have a number of questions on the table that we could ask to be answered and brought back to us next week. It may not be a comprehensive list, but the questions that Nancy asked, what is it going to cost to maintain it? What's the insurance? Give us an estimate on what it would cost to contract out the drivers. How, are we going to have to pay $25,000 for new batteries in 3 years, considering what steep hills we have? Or does that mean, it'll probably last 5? So that kind of data might help us as we move forward with making a decision. I think we still need to talk about who it's going to serve, because if we're serving primarily the COG and the incline traffic, then I absolutely want to charge and have it be something where we're not just using city money. Whereas if it's more for neighborhoods and people who are trying to get to and from work or to and from their home from their parking spot half a mile away, that would be different. So, but it seems like maybe some of the data could be brought back to us pretty quickly.
Okay, so do you have a list of things that you can send to staff that you want answered?
Oh, I just said it.
Okay.
I guess I could write it down and try to remember, and maybe I'll get around to emailing it, but I probably won't.
One thing real quick, just to answer the one question, the EV would not go up Ruxton, so it would not be serving the COG or the incline.
There's a mechanical challenge of the steep slopes and the EV batteries that they lose if they don't have enough. It would hurt the capacity quite a bit if it went up and down the steep slope on Ruxton.
Serpentine?
Serpentine would also be, yes, and that's assuming that we serviced Rainbow Falls every 15 minutes, which, that's also a decision that it would need to be made.
Okay, I have one question. So does Estes Park charge for this? No?
No.
Oh, it's a part of their parking?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Natalie, thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few questions that I'd like to email, but I would like to keep this on the agenda for next week. I'm ready to order a second one, so I feel like, I don't want to hold back.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
What I guess one of the main things I don't think I'm hearing right now is what the return on investment will be. And that could be quality of life issues. It could be, but I'm looking at one shuttle with 28 seats. What will the scheduling be? And then also, if it's a pilot, which I love pilots, I think pilots are good, but what criteria are you using to evaluate the pilot to see if it is successful or not? And I'm not I'm not gathering that from your presentation today. So those would be my two biggest questions, is return on investment and criteria to set up the criteria now to evaluate a pilot.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Chandler.
So it sounds like we have questions, and that we're going to, I can email to, do you want them to Denise and CC you? Okay. So, and then we'd bring this back in 2 weeks to another work session. Would that be enough time, or?
2 weeks is the March 22nd, which you guys have a work session now for the library. So if you want it then.
Well, I guess what I'm asking
No,
maybe the question is this, of the questions that have been asked, are those answerable in 2 weeks?
I think the hardest question may be getting some real numbers on the driving from the driver's side, just because that would be contract out. So we'd have to, but maybe we can get some from Estes Park and then have to modify that.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out in terms of to calibrate the questions that you have before you, in terms of how much time do you need given the set of questions that are come up. What are you thinking?
The ROI question is going to be difficult, and it's very subjective. You know, how many cars to get off the road, how many more people come to visit, or how many fewer. I mean, that we almost need to have a whole conversation about the benefits and negatives. I mean, if people do come into town just for the trolley, some people may not want that.
All right, Michelle.
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, so back to kind of the time period here from the questions you've heard. What are we thinking about? Is from the questions you've heard, is it like about a 2 or 3 week period, or a 4 week, or what do you think?
Well, 2 weeks is definitely better than 1.
Okay, well.
And I don't know
I'm asking you how much time you need
sure
to answer the question. Just give me a guesstimate so that maybe, you know, Denise and the mayor who sets the agenda can have a good idea about.
I would say 4 weeks.
Okay, all right.
That would be April 12th work session, so I'll bring that up if that's okay.
Okay, all right. Are we in agreement that that's a good amount of time?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Is that it for you gentlemen?
We have a little bit more on here, I think. No, maybe not. Let's see if we covered everything real quick. No, I think we covered it all. The rest is in there.
That's what I thought so too. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, council, let's move on here to item E, which is receive or act on council correspondence. And I'll just start over here with Michelle.
I received email from Keith, I believe it's Sheplin. He did meet with Kevin Stevenson discussing 2 parking spots up there off of Waltham that he was concerned about. So I am going to email him tomorrow stating that if he does have any additional questions, to please meet with Kevin.
Have anything this evening?
Nancy.
Nothing, thank you.
One thing that I would like to talk about is, it seems like to me, the $70 parking tickets that people are getting for going over even just 1 minute over the meter downtown, I think are a little sort of kind of pricey. And I was doing some checking. Okay, the city and county of Denver only just increased theirs from to $20 to $25. City of Colorado Springs is $20. It just seems like to me 3.5 times is a little wild. It seems like also that used to be $35 for going over. So, you know me, I'm pretty good about going through that fee chart, and I'm just wondering, I'm feeling really bad that I didn't catch that before. So I guess thoughts on that?
So that was that was approved by council in 2017 that we discovered. So we had to bring it back to that rate So for whatever reasons in 2017, they decided to go for a $70 fee. I think it's a bit high, and I have no problem in looking at something better. At the same time, if the fee is, if it's cheaper to break the rule than the cost to pay the daily hourly rate, then it serves no purpose either. So we kind of need to find that balance, but it may be a bit high, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, just for the record, for the public, they may want to park in the yellow zone, okay? There's a lot of cheaper places than just going a minute over your meter. My thought is, I guess I'd like to hear some comments from staff about something that's a little more reasonable. Does anybody else agree with me? Yes?
I'd like to know, and I don't know if this is in our code or not, whether the parking ticket is only good for a certain amount of time and then you get another parking ticket, because when I'm downtown in Colorado Springs, if I'm in the courthouse all day, I end up with 2 parking tickets on my car because the first one is only good, I think, by, I don't know what their law is, for 4 hours or for 2 hours, and then I get another one, you know, if I didn't make it to the lot. In Manitou, if you get a ticket, whether, let's say it's $70, do I get another, can I just leave my car there for the next week and I'll be okay? Or is it $70 a day, or what does the code say?
Yeah, the code is not real clear. SP Plus, when they were here, they used to say 1 ticket per day, and that's all you can do. I think that it would be probably a better idea to have a lower ticket price, but then have progressive ticketing as they keep the car and they don't move it.
So I think we need to amend our, look at amending if staff could talk with Jeff or come up with some language to amend our laws so that it's clear what our authority is so not just the dollar amount, but you know, you get a ticket and that's good for the next whatever, 2 hours, and after that you get another ticket. It doesn't necessarily have to be a progressive thing. At least Colorado Springs, they just give you another one. So I just wanted to suggest that we look at changing the code to clarify that issue.
Yes, I think that would help a lot, because then someone's not, you know, they get that first buffer and hey, it's only 35 or 40. And then from there, if they choose not to move it, then they're paying the 80 or whatever, the 2 of them. So I think that helps with being a little friendlier at the beginning and not too pricey. So.
And I think that the prices that you had listed on the parking proposal were low. And so maybe what we need to do to balance things out is to increase the hourly rate a little bit, but cut back on the fee for being late. That's just my suggestion.
Okay.
It's all a matter of changing the code.
So is there sort of enough direction on maybe dealing with that $70 issue?
Yeah, so if council gives us that direction, we'll definitely bring it back. I'm thinking the April work session again and really have that discussion.
Okay.
And I'm not sure we need it in a code, Julie, but I'll reach out to the attorney. I think the the fee schedule is easier, because then you can change it. Like right now you're saying, hey, let's bring it back. That's just by a resolution and it's an initial meeting.
Okay,
So if that works for you.
I guess on my council correspondence issue, is there consensus that we want to have staff look at that $70 fee? Julie? Yes. Natalie? Nancy?
And the Mobility Parking Board take a look as well.
Okay. How long is that going to take to have them take a look at it?
They meet, what day of the month?
23rd.
The 23rd. So they could look at it at March 23rd, and then we could bring it back on April 12th work session if that works for this
Okay.
team.
Nancy, is that okay with you? Okay. Julie?
Agreed.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, thank you. Let's see, where did we leave off here? Nancy?
Natalie, sure.
I'm sorry, Natalie, council correspondence.
Yeah, I don't have anything from correspondence. I am wondering though, based on the dates from the Library Board of Trustees meeting, do we want to delay the conversation until April, or are we comfortable with the current timeline?
I guess I'm confused about what your question is.
Sure. So the Library Board of Trustees is meeting on
I believe the 16th.
the 16th, and they'll be discussing collections as part of that meeting, which I think was part of our concern. And so I'm just curious as to whether or not that provides us with enough time. I mean, it's feeling a little rushed to me in terms of getting research and having an understanding of things, but maybe everybody else is comfortable.
In terms of that, for that one agenda item that we'd asked to have.
Correct. I think we were discussing it on the 22nd.
Right, exactly, on the 22nd. So you're thinking that from the 16th, the report to the 22nd, we won't have enough time to think about what, if they make any decision? I haven't even seen their agenda yet.
I mean, that's what I mean, is I just feel like if we waited 2 weeks, we might be able to.
Well, I mean, we can always postpone it if there's nothing there.
Gotcha.
All right. That's just my thought.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, all right. Julie?
I just wanted to comment that there's a lot of, I don't know if it's gravel or dirt around the Ruxton Roundabout and on Manitou Ave between Ruxton Roundabout and Tubby's, and it's been there for a long time, and it doesn't look good, and it doesn't look like it's getting cleaned up, and all along the south side of the Manitou Ave, across from Soda Springs Park is really, looks like it's just really dirty. So I wanted to see if we could do some better street sweeping, and then I am also, that's it.
All right, one last chance for council correspondence. City Administrator?
I have nothing else tonight, thank you.
Denise?
Okay, I have several. First, I want to recognize everybody for International Women's Day. It's today. We have 5 council members that are women, and they are leaders in our community, and we have lots of leaders that are women in our community, and I want to recognize that. It's a big thing, and it's recognized throughout, so I want to make sure that we take a moment to recognize that. Hiawatha Gardens, I think all of you have received the information about now there's a virtual information center, and I want to recognize Emily. She did a tremendous amount of work. We did this all in-house, and she did it, so it saved a lot of money, really did a phenomenal job. And then Dole was the MC as part of that video, so if you can take a moment to watch that, I want to make sure that we give the credit. And then, of course, Alex is always working on those type of things, so give credit to those. The 2 upcoming meetings for Hiawatha is March 16th at 6 p.m. It's the virtual meeting here. And then March 30th at 6 p.m. is here. 16th is virtual, and that's at 6 p.m. Free groceries distribution is next Tuesday. Coffee with me is this Thursday at 7 a.m. And then I also want to recognize Amber, who works in the city clerk's office. Her last day is Friday. She's going on into do some work in legal and doing some things there. So her last day is Friday on this Friday, and she will be missed. And I want to recognize her for everything that she does.
Ms. Howell, when is your coffee and where?
Thank you. It's this Thursday, and it's here at Memorial Hall. So we just have coffee.
Just in case there's anybody listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council, is there anything else? Then it sounds like we stand adjourned. Thank you.